This is the ALGO Podcast, episode 5 with Daniela Rizzo. A warning for viewers that we talk about some quite sensitive material. We dive into eating disorders, self-image, childhood traumas, and a little bit about modern dating. It was a long discussion, one that I had quite a lot of fun taking part in and filming and planning for in anticipation. At some point, Daniela will probably be on again. We had a lot to talk about. We aimed for maybe an hour and a half and we ended up talking for close to 3 hours. If there are any questions you guys want me to shoot her next time, or if there's anything you want to know, anything you want us to include next time, please just leave a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel if you don't want to watch the whole video and just shoot this, see the short snippets, and enjoy. With your eating disorder, I know I'm your trainer, but we haven't actually really talked about what it was like for you. I haven't had many clients with eating disorders, and it's not my specialty by any means. You say I'm on a huge fitness and recovery journey. What does that mean to you?
I guess, okay, so I obviously can't speak for everyone, but I feel like with eating disorders, they never actually go away if you've had one. And I guess what recovery means for me is being able to manage it, but always knowing that it is there in some aspect. And I guess what I mean by that is, for example, I think people with eating disorders always have, so I was volunteering for ages with this eating disorder charity. So I met loads and loads of other women that had anorexia and bulimia and other things. Like there's loads of stuff that goes into it. So there's like binge eating disorder, orthorexia, etc.
What's orthorexia?
Orthorexia, I believe, is when you really restrict your food. So you say, for example, oh, I'm gluten-free, I'm vegan, I'm this, but it's actually not because you want to be vegan, or it's not because you want to be, or you are gluten-free. It's because you're trying to restrict your food as much as you can.
Is it like a way they mask not eating? They just sort of hide behind saying,
or
I'm this, and this.
Yeah, or you, and then obviously I've never had orthorexia, so I can't speak for them, but I feel like it's you end up being like, no, actually I'm eating. I am eating because I eat every day, but really you're restricting so much food, and you're not allowing yourself to have lots of different food groups, etc. All because you're trying to. I struggled with bulimia. Like firstly it started as anorexia actually, but I couldn't, like, just me, the way I am, I'm not very structured, so I just couldn't keep that up at all, because
that's... Keep the anorexia up?
I couldn't. Anorexia is like you restrict your food so much that you literally barely eat anything.
And bulimia is
bulimia,
when you eat it, but then you throw it back up.
And then you purge in like various different ways. So that could be through like, not being too graphic, but vomiting. It could be
as graphic as you want.
Laxatives, exercise, like over exercising for hours to try and burn all the calories off. So I had that from about 19 until I started recovering, I guess, in my late 20s. But then I also relapsed quite a lot. So I've even had periods, which I don't actually talk about, so this is quite open, but I've had periods across the last 2 years, and even this year, where I've relapsed, which is what I mean by it's always there under the surface. So you can be getting on with your life and be like, yeah, I'm fine, I'm doing really well in fitness, I'm doing well in my job, I'm whatever, all of these areas are okay, but there's certain days where you'll get low or overwhelmed and all of those things, and your initial, or mine, my initial thing is to go straight back into those behaviors again. So it's about constantly managing them and being aware that they will always be there. It's kind of a coping mechanism, isn't it? It's like a crutch.
Have you identified if there are any specific triggers that get you closer to relapsing? Or is it just sort of general overwhelmingness? Is it just comfort when life in general gets hard? Is there specific things that set it off?
I think it's, so I would say bulimia is an addiction. So it's obviously a mental health issue, but I really would say it's an addiction. And the reason...
Addiction to what?
Addiction to... Again, this is so open, actually, to talk about this. I think it's really hard for people to get it when they haven't had bulimia themselves. But basically, you feel like you feel really overwhelmed. So the days that you binge and purge, you'll feel really overwhelmed, out of control. Like your world is around you is a complete mess, and you don't know what to do about it. And instead of finding healthy ways to cope with that, what I used to end up doing was just using like food as a comfort and then purging. And the eating food as a comfort is like it's kind of like you're pushing down your emotions, like you're pushing down whatever is going on around you, which sounds really weird, because then you feel really shit about yourself because I didn't want to put on weight. And you feel disgusted because you've just eaten however much. And then your next thing is getting rid of it. And so then the purging process, I feel like this is really, I don't know if I should say this or not, but it's kind of like you get a sort of adrenaline rush when you get rid of it. And it's like you've then released all of those emotions, even though you haven't at all. In no way, but it's like you've just got rid of it. So then that problem is like, okay, well, that day overwhelmed me and it's gone. However, that adrenaline rush goes quite quickly, because then you feel really shit because you're making your body feel crap. You're depleted of electrolytes. You're tired. You're all of these things. And so then I would just end up sleeping a lot. So it's just a constant cycle but it ends up being, because you don't know how else to cope, that's why it ends up being an addiction. Because every time something happens, or every time you feel a bit overwhelmed, or every time you feel like, having a binge and overeating, because sometimes you just feel like that's your coping mechanism, and it's like you get this little adrenaline hit at the end, which I don't think anyone really explains it like that sometimes. But yeah, that's how it always felt for me personally.
There's a phrase which is something like, the devil that you know is better than the angel that you don't. Was it addictive because it was also something that you knew was there? It was as shit of a coping mechanism as it may have been. At least you knew what you were in for, and you still felt like there was an element of control. Is it sort of like that?
Yes, I think so. I think it's like, it just becomes, it's such a strange thing. It becomes this habit that it's really hard to get out of. Also, if you think you're really hungry after, because you've just got rid of everything, literally everything, and you're hungry. So then you try to manage the next day or whenever, and you'll try to eat normally, but you're starving. So you just keep doing it again, and it just ends up it's just this horrible pattern of just continuously binging and purging and trying to go to work when you feel like shit because you've got no energy, and then trying to get through the day and going home and binging and purging. And so yeah, I think it becomes an addiction, but it's also just this habit that it's this no way out sort of thing, which sounds, again, like, it sounds really depressing when I think about it. but that's what I felt. I actually never thought I would ever recover, because I was like, I don't know how to get out of this. Literally, I don't know. Every time I tried to stop, I couldn't stop at all. It would just get worse and worse. So yeah, I think you just don't know how to cope in any other way. I guess, like, you know, it's probably the same with like alcohol addiction. I've never been an alcoholic, but I guess it's the same sort of thing. I guess anything that's all, you know, shopping addiction, etc., like gambling, I guess it's just you don't really know how to stop.
I think this is not a scientific fact. This is just how I see it. I think all addictions share a really common thing in that you don't even need to be physically addicted to something. Like, I don't know, heroin is physically addictive. If you stop it, you get physical withdrawal symptoms. But mentally, when whatever is happening in your life and you go to that really dark place, whatever form it might take, whether it's eating disorders, drug addictions, alcoholism, gambling, name it. I think a lot of people we subconsciously know it's this, but I don't think people say it this way. There's a certain comfort you get because you know what you're in for. It's terrifying to go to the unknown and try something that might fail, because then that also means you have to hope it's going to work. Because you have no reason to get out of that cycle unless you think something might work. But to even hope is terrifying, because then if it breaks you down, it's a very brave thing to want to change and think it might work. So it's like that cycle is, as horrible as it is, there is a comfort to it, which is why it's hard to get out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, what's life going to be like without it? Like, yeah. It was also my way of, actually a very stupid way, to be honest, but it was my way of controlling my weight. But the reason why I say it's a stupid way is because you don't control your weight, because you still consume however many calories, and you're not going to get rid of them. A lot of them stay in your body. So actually, I ended up more bloated a lot of the time, and because of that, I could hide what I was doing a lot more, because no one thought. I've definitely had times where I've looked really skinny, unhealthy, and underweight, but I've also had times where I've looked just normal weight and average, and no one would think anything because there'd be no cause for concern. So then you kind of think, oh, what's life going to be like if I'm not controlling it? And then I'll have to eat normally, and I'll put on loads of weight, and I'll whatever. That's the kind of stuff that goes through your head. So yeah, I get what you mean. Definitely a fear of change.
Change in
and
general.
It took a long time.
And it's still gonna, like you said, it's still something. It's not something to just get over. It's just something to manage better and better as time goes on. You can look back on it with hindsight now, that the adrenaline rush that you got was like sort of a comfort or a coping mechanism, or something that made you feel good but in a bad way. Did you know that at the time when it was happening, or is it just...
God, I wasn't really aware of anything, I don't think. I was like, it's really strange, because you're just... I feel like, I always say this to everyone, like my friends and stuff. The whole of my 20s, I feel like they were a blur, a lot of them, because I spent a lot of time in my head. I actually spent, it's quite sad, but I spent a lot of time thinking about my eating disorder for years, actually. Like, if I think about what I was like through uni, and even when I traveled, like I lived in Thailand for a while, and I was really, really struggled with bulimia then, massively. And I spent days, instead of like exploring, like I'm in Thailand, I'm on an island, or like, you know, I was in Bangkok, instead of like actually embracing that experience and exploring things and having a great time, in my head, I'm thinking about food, or I'm feeling guilty because I've eaten something and I can't purge it because I'm out and I'm not on my own. And yeah, I think I was just very unaware of everything for years. And so when I look back, I can now see the impact that it had on everything. Like even my relationships with my family, like I very much just wanted everyone to go away all the time because I just wanted to be on my own doing what I was doing. So I became like very deceitful and I isolated myself even from like my friends and stuff. I'd spend a lot of time in my room. And all of that is literally because I wanted to binge and purge, or I was in a cycle that I couldn't get out of. So I was really unaware of what all of that was. It was like, it's just like a compulsion. I don't know. It was like I was just going, like I was on autopilot, just continuously doing the same shit for years, over and over and over again. I think until one day I just had enough and I was like, I need to start like looking at this. This is ridiculous. Like, I can't live my life like this. And that's when I started looking into like how I would get help and how I would start working on it. And that's when I started realizing, oh, okay, well, this is what I've been doing. But that took, God, I think about 10 years.
Do you remember what that moment was when you just decided to start?
I think, again, really disgusting. I think I'd basically vomited blood, and I knew of the effects on my body and like my teeth, etc., like my enamel, like rotting away, not rotting away, but like depleting.
Getting worn down.
Getting worn down. So I knew about all of that. I knew about the effects on my body. I was feeling really ill. I was getting stomach cramps all the time. I had quite a long time where my periods were really irregular or just non-existent. And I remember just being like, I'm literally going to destroy myself in one way or another. Like, I'd read an article about, people like losing lives over it. And I was just like, I also back then, unsurprisingly enough, struggled with relationships massively then and dating then. And I was like, I eventually want to meet someone, and I cannot meet someone if I'm like this. So that's the day where I was like, okay, well, eventually I'm going to want to have children. I want to have a healthy relationship with someone. I don't want to destroy my body. I want to actually be successful. So that was the point. It was like a wake up call, I think.
How was it affecting your relationships? Would it be a case where, so you go on the dates, you meet the people, whatever it is, would you get to the point where you're in a relationship with someone, then it gets really bad? Or is it from the get-go, there are massive problems? What was it like?
So there's lots of things here. So when I was younger, actually, I got into relationships really easily. It's just as I've got older, I think so much has happened. I think I overthink every single element of everything that I'm doing. But so I would get into a relationship, but because I was so deceitful and hiding what I was doing, I wasn't completely vulnerable. So I would try to hide what I was doing from whoever I was with. And I would get annoyed, for example, if I'd like binged and they wanted to see me, I'd get really angry, and it wasn't their fault because they don't know. They have no idea. But inside I was like, oh, it's annoying. Like, why do you want to see me? Why can't you just, I didn't want them around me. And so that's obviously horrible for the other person that you're in a relationship with, because they're then feeling dismissed, but also like, what the hell is wrong with her? Mm-hmm. Like, why is she being so closed off? And it also affects your mental health massively. You end up you think you're really shit. So you've got literally zero self-worth. You think you're really unattractive as well. And that was a massive thing for me, is thinking I was really unattractive. I always thought I was fat, even though I never was. And so you don't feel like I don't know, you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel sexy, you don't feel like you want to be around them that much. And then because you're just feeling so low, you're irritable, there's so many things. And I also felt when I was open about it in some of my relationships, which I was, if they tried to stop me from doing what I was doing, that also really made me angry. So I basically expected, which was ridiculous of me, I basically expected my boyfriend or boyfriends, whatever, didn't have multiple boyfriends at once in different times.
The different boyfriends.
The 10 at a time. I basically expected that they should just get on with what I was doing and be fine with it and not ever say anything.
That they should just accept it.
They should accept it. Like, there were even times where I would do it while they were there, like not in the same room, obviously, and if they said anything to me or tried to help me or tried to talk about it, etc., I would get angry because I was like, you're getting in the way of what I want to do. And so you couldn't have a relationship. I do know there's lots of women that have struggled with bulimia that are in relationships or that have been able to manage them successfully. But for me, because I can be so closed off, I guess, and I like to manage things on my own, I didn't find that comfortable. And so, yeah, that would be why. And then, so when I think about all of my relationships now and why I struggle now, that is a major reason, I would say.
What is the eating disorder?
Eating disorders.
Currently?
Not now, I think, but I think the the patterns and behaviours that I learned through having an eating disorder are still with me. In terms of like, for example, like being vulnerable with someone. I'm quite publicly vulnerable now, like on Instagram and in my blog, etc. But being vulnerable with someone, I still find really hard, and I'm still very closed off, and I like to keep myself. I like to keep it some sort of distance, and that is definitely something that I learned throughout the whole process of having an eating disorder, etc. Because I just hid myself away all the time. So yeah, it's a complex and interesting one, I think.
Do you think it's easier in a way to be vulnerable to the people in your blog, to the people on social media, compared to a romantic partner?
Yes and no. Yes, because I, in a way, I can disassociate myself from it. Although there's lots of stuff as well, as in I do get really nervous about sharing a lot of stuff because I'm really aware all the time of what people think of me, and that's just all I've always been that way. But also, and they're not. I guess it's the whole thing that they're not going to leave me, are they? Or they're not going to. There's not really a risk there. Does that make sense? It's like if I was in a romantic relationship, and it's happened to me. I've had people break up with me, several people break up with me because of the way I was, because of the things that I struggled with, and I literally don't blame them for it at all when I look back. At the time I didn't get it, but I completely understand now. But so they're not going to, basically the people that read my blog are going to read it and resonate, maybe, or maybe not, who knows, and that's it. There's nothing else. However, if I'm in a relationship with someone and I'm vulnerable and open and I'm allowing myself to get hurt, which obviously you need to do, otherwise you're not ever going to meet anyone, working on that. But yeah, so if I was in a relationship with someone open and vulnerable, then I I guess, open myself up to get hurt and left and rejected and discarded and all of those things. Which then make me feel shit. So I guess it's a defense mechanism to not be vulnerable. Yeah. God.
That makes sense. It's easier to dissociate when you can't see the people who are basically judging you. And even if they judge you bad, you at least have enough of the positive experience to know, well, some of my audience are still going to like it. Some of my, I'm still going to have an audience. Whereas if it's a partner one-to-one, it's like, okay, I have chosen you. I think you are worth it. If I then tell you and you don't accept it, someone who I think is worth it has judged me not worthy. And that's never really an easy thing to think.
Yeah.
A lot of it probably does stem from also accepting it as part of yourself too. So in the height of the eating disorder days, I imagine a big reason why if a partner was to have left you because of the disorder or whatever it caused, it's because on some level, whether it's shallow or a deep level, whatever, you knew that it wasn't a good thing to have. Like if someone leaves you because, I don't know, you're Italian or part Italian, you're like, okay, this is just who I am. This isn't for you, fair enough. But if it's a reason that you also wish you didn't have, then you also might start to resent yourself too.
Yeah.
Resent them. Or both.
Well, there's a lot of shame associated with it, isn't it? I basically, it's funny, I was talking to my therapist about this the other day. I've basically felt ashamed of myself my whole life, I would say. And that is why you're hiding stuff and you're deceitful, because you're not openly going to be like, you're not going to openly go to work and be like, oh, what'd you do last night? Oh, I flipping ordered however many, like, pizzas. And I just sat there and ate them. And then I vomited. Like, you're not, do you know what I mean? You're just not going to, people would look at you and be like, wow, okay. And also, there's such a stigma attached to eating disorders, and still, I know that people speak about them a lot more now, but people genuinely think you're crazy. They genuinely think you're crazy. Like, I used to speak about it to people when I was at uni, and I used to try to be open about it with my friends, and, you know, like, even my family. No one understands. Like, why would you, because logically, why would you do that to yourself? You know? Why would you do that to yourself? It makes no sense. But it makes a lot of sense to the person that is doing it. It made a lot of sense to me, and it makes a lot of sense to however millions of people struggle with the same thing. But actually openly talking about that at work or with friends or with a partner, people are just like, well, just stop doing that. You need to stop doing that. Yeah, I realize I need to stop doing that. Like, I'm literally
figured that out.
I'm literally the illest person around right now. Like, I realize that I need to stop doing that, but I don't flipping know how to. And yeah, so I guess you're then so ashamed of yourself. You're trying to hide it. You're trying to keep your whole life together. You're trying to not be judged. And then you're basically this whole facade that isn't real. And yeah, it's a really weird feeling. But then you just carry that through with you your whole life if it's not dealt with. So then I've just felt ashamed about everything and just been really, like, not open. Just really, just been scared to open up to things, because I think, well, everyone's just going to think I'm a weirdo, aren't they? They're going to think I'm nuts. So, yeah. Does that answer the question? I think I went off on a tangent there.
I love tangents.
Yeah.
When you did try and get better, did you have what was your support system going through it? Was there a certain group you went to? Was it a friend who maybe did understand, or was it all by yourself? And I guess backtracking a little, what are the other big misconceptions that people have about eating disorders? What are the stereotypes that people just get completely wrong about it?
I had no help, actually. That was my own fault, because I didn't tell anyone. I had friends that supported me so I could talk to them about stuff. But actually, so again, very open, but so what I ended up doing is, so that I would stop binging, I got more and more into like alcohol and drugs, for example. And I would make myself so busy that I wasn't at home and that I didn't have a chance basically to do anything. And actually, if I'm very honest with you, I still make myself so busy. I don't give myself any time to do anything. I'm literally always doing something, or like training or writing or out, or I never just sit there, because I actually can't. Because I think I'm still quite scared that if I do and I give myself enough time, I could go back into those sorts of behaviours. So sorry, what were we saying?
The support system.
Support system.
No one.
Was no one. I didn't really tell anyone. So I kind of transferred that to other things. And then I had to manage those things. Does that make sense? So I found ways to stop binging eventually.
But then you traded
but
it
then
with
I
something
traded
else.
it in with something else. And that never really went away. It took a really, really long time. Until I started getting older, I guess, and I started doing things like, this sounds really weird actually, but this is my own method. My own method was to wean myself off, and that's what I mean by an addiction. It's an addiction. My own method was, okay, you're allowed to binge a couple of times a week. That's what you're allowed to do. I don't know where I learned this from. I must have read it I don't know. Anyway. So then I would be like, okay, well, that's all right. I've only done it a couple of times this week. And I said I'd only do it a couple of times this week. And it was more about like little wins. Like, and then it would be like, oh, I only did it once a week. And then I only did it once every few weeks. And then I was like, oh, actually, I can do this. Like, I'm getting over it. I can do it. And it was those little small steps. Then eventually one day I was like, I haven't done this for months. I haven't done it. So that was what I did. But I kind of wish that I went to therapy, if I'm honest, because I think emotionally, I needed a lot of support through that. And I'm only now, as I'm seeing a therapist now, I'm only now understanding all of it. Whereas I didn't then. It was just like more of a, okay, I need to stop this. I need to get rid of it. So how am I going to do it in my own way? This is going to work for me. That's what I'm going to do.
When you were weaning yourself off, did you find that in the beginning it was obviously very difficult, but then as you started to do it less and less, was there ever a point where you did it, maybe a couple times in the week, whatever, but then when you did it, or as you're doing it, you realized you actually did it mostly out of habit, not because you wanted to for once? Does that make sense?
Yeah. There was a long time where I didn't want to do it anymore. I felt really disgusted about myself.
But did you still do it sort of out of the necessity of the habit?
Yeah. But for a long time, I mean, when you think about it, about 10 years is a long time. It's a really long time. And even, like I say now, I had a few years of where I didn't at all. And I was so happy with myself. But then there's been times in the last couple of years where I felt really low and I've relapsed. And I used to get really disappointed with myself actually about that. And then now I don't get as disappointed. I think, do you know what? Whatever. There's no, it is what it is, isn't it? Like I can't, there's no point getting angry at myself because that just makes me feel even worse. And then I will just get myself into this stupid habit. Whereas we all have like our crap days, don't we? So I just see it as that. But Yeah, for a long time, I hated what I was doing, if I'm honest, throughout most of it, because it's not a nice way of life. And like I said, like you don't experience life. You're going through every day just thinking about what you're thinking about, and just thinking about food and thinking, oh my God, I just ate this cake and blah, blah, blah. And everyone else is talking around you, and all you're thinking about is this cake that you ate, that you didn't want to eat and you want to get rid of, but you can't get rid of it because you're with everyone. So yeah, for a long time I hated it. And I guess that hate and disgust really spurred me on to do something about it. But actually, there's a lot of people, like I've spoken to a lot of women that never, ever, ever stop. They can't.
Are they self-aware about it though? Because I think a big reason why you were able to... The way we move on from any sort of addiction or anything that happens in the mind is, like I say, it's in training all the time, but it is the mindset. It's not just the behavior that you want to change, it's what's causing it. The women who don't stop, do you feel like they're in a place where they're ready to stop and they're like almost there, or no, they don't even know how far gone they are?
I think, firstly, I shouldn't just say women, because a lot of men struggle with bulimia as well. It's obviously not a gender specific thing. I say women because the voluntary work that I've done for a long time, I don't do it anymore just because of capacity, but I say women because I only worked with women. And so I heard a lot of stories from them. And I think they're aware of what they're doing. You are very aware of what you're doing, but I think the fear of change is too much for them. It's the fear of, for example, a lot of the people that I helped, they were on, they would have like a nutritionist like help them with an eating plan. You get that. I've gone through help when I was a lot younger. I went through help with my eating disorder, and you get put on like food plans, etc. And because you're not in control, you don't want to do it. You don't want to eat it because you're then having someone telling you what to do, and then you just can't handle that, because it's like, well, I then don't know how many calories is in anything, and I don't want to eat 3 meals a day because I'm not used to eating 3 meals a day, and what's that going to do to my body and all of that stuff. So I think they're very aware. I just think the fear of change is more than what's going to happen to their life actually when they recover. Does that make sense?
It's not that the plan or the nutritionist wouldn't work. It sounds like it's just the approach was completely wrong, because you have the behavior of the eating disorder, but then you have the thing that's causing it that's always in the head. Whereas if you had the nutrition plan, you're just trying to put a bandage on the behavior, but it's not really addressing what's causing it. So it's like you don't want to do it.
Yeah, and also I feel I don't want to trivialize anything, or I also can't speak for everyone, so I'm very aware. I don't want to say the wrong thing, basically, because I don't want someone might see it and be like, no, actually, that's not my experience. That is not everyone's experience.
Yeah. Whatever this is, it's based on your experience.
It's based on my experience, but I think it's, okay, so it's like the fear of change, but I think it's just, it can also be not getting the right help, because a good example is when I was younger, and actually when I was diagnosed with bulimia, I think I was 19, 20. And I was referred to the mental health, I can't remember what it's called now. Anyway, mental health, something. Whatever. And then I was put on medication. So I was on medication for 9 years. I was put on medication, and then I went to, started going to this therapist. And I remember the therapist basically said to me, why have you got an eating disorder? You're a normal weight.
That's helpful.
That's
great advice.
And I just the stuff that we talked about, it was so basic.
Yeah.
It was so basic, and I was like, I'm not an idiot, you know? Like, I know this is just normal stuff that I could tell myself. Like, I need someone to help me to identify the root cause. And actually, what I would say, it all comes down to the way you feel about yourself. All of it. All of it comes down to self-worth. Everything, I would say. Because you end up feeling so low that you just don't even think you're good enough to get better sometimes.
You don't think you deserve the help.
Yeah, you just don't think you deserve it. You just think you're so crap, and you're so ashamed of yourself that you just stay in this. You just never think you're going to get better. And I actually think that's a lot of it. And then the help is rubbish. You don't really get that. It might be better these days. Obviously, I'm 36 now, so it's a long time ago. I don't know. But I don't think so, if I'm honest. So, yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. And sometimes you're very aware, but you just don't know how to actually stop what you're doing.
You know where you are and where you want to be. You just have no idea how to connect it.
Yeah.
And then when you get help that's, let's say, not helpful or not useful, it's not only not useful, but it's like, okay, I've just about mustered the courage to go to someone for help. It feels like a massive letdown. Did it on some level sort of make you more hesitant to reach out again to someone else? Because it was just so shit. You think this is supposed to be a professional.
Yeah.
And you're telling me basic stuff.
I was quite arrogant as well when I was younger, in a way. Because I was always quite intellectual, I suppose, even though I definitely don't come across that way now, but especially not in my normal day-to-day conversations. But I was very aware of a lot of things, and I was at uni at the time, and I was studying a lot about people, and I read a lot about this stuff, right? Like, even though I was suffering with an eating disorder, I read a lot of books about it, and I read a lot about why people had eating disorders. I just never actually did anything about it, but I knew lots of things. And so I was a little bit insulted, I think, when I had these therapists. I was just like, okay, I mean, I don't understand. And actually I was quite arrogant about it, but maybe if I was the way that I am now, then I would probably, I don't know. I think things would have been a bit different there's lots of things, like I've developed a lot. I wasn't a great person then, but I've developed a lot. But at the time, yes, I was really arrogant, and I was like, actually, I don't need help, and I don't need anyone, and I'm just gonna, for years, I just did what I was doing, and then eventually I was like, I'm just gonna do it myself, because I remember when I got help years ago, I didn't actually get anything. So, yeah, I suppose I became just really self-reliant. And again,
because you had to.
Yeah, this will then go into the relationship stuff where I'm like, well, I don't actually need anyone, because I've done everything that I've done on my own.
Yeah.
Which is why I say they're so linked, even now. Oh, God, I'm understanding things about myself.
I had a really good question. It's just completely lost my head. The disorder, the past, relationships. Do you think part of the reason that you had the relapses after years was because mentally you maybe, I could be completely wrong, on some level took it for granted that you sort of told yourself, okay, I had an eating disorder, now I don't. And because of that, it made you keep less of an eye on it, as opposed to maybe if you were telling yourself, no, I'm always going to have it, I need to maintain it. Maybe it could have helped you keep your guard up against it a bit more. part of it was sort of thinking it's done, you didn't really, and then boom, it came up out of nowhere?
I would say it's because I didn't actually deal with it. I would say I don't deal with anything actually until now that I'm older, but it's because I didn't allow it's because the way I deal with everything, like even breakups, whatever, is like, okay, this is crap, and I'll let myself be upset for a short period of time, and then I'm like, this doesn't work for me. So
being upset or
whatever's the
over,
feeling or whatever's over. So this doesn't work for me. So I think if we talk about the eating disorder, in my head I was like, right, this doesn't work for me, so we need to stop. But actually, I didn't actually deal with any of the emotions around that at all, or I guess why I developed it in the first place. I didn't deal with any of that.
Was it like an extreme suppression instead of trying to break it down?
Yeah, it was like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. That's it. We need to get rid of this. We need to move on. And so I never really thought about it much again. And so I just carried on with what I was doing in life. But then what ends up happening is when you do hit another low point in your life, or you get to a stage where you feel overwhelmed and you feel crap, it all rushes back again, because actually you haven't dealt with it. You've just pushed it aside. And I guess that's with lots of things, right? So say, for example, like I say, you've gone for a breakup and you've not actually allowed yourself to feel those emotions. So you've been like, okay, well, we've broken up, it's done now. And so what I would do is break up with the person. That's sorted. Don't need to think about it. And now I've either moved on to the next, or I've moved on to the next thing, and I haven't allowed myself to deal with it. So then you get a low day or whatever, or something else comes up, and all of those emotions rush back. And it's exactly the same as with an eating disorder, I would say.
Where do you think it did actually stem from, now that you're starting to look back on it all? If it all goes back to self-worth, probably something from childhood, because that's usually where all this fun stuff comes from.
Yeah.
What was it that made you feel so not worthy?
So as a child, obviously if my mum ever sees this, she's gonna go mad, but yeah, as a child, I never felt I never felt like loved or accepted or cared for. Not cared for, like the basic stuff was there, but emotionally I never felt I just never felt emotionally secure. I never felt like I'd done anything right. I think I was always like, I spent a lot of my life like seeking approval, but I was also a really socially anxious, shy child, to the point like I had pretty much no friends at school, hardly. And then actually when I went to secondary school, I had a few, but not really. I was really, really quiet. I was really nervous. I didn't really particularly fit in. I didn't really care about fitting in, to be honest. And I did care, actually. I did care. I say that I didn't. I wanted to fit in, but I just didn't. Like, I wasn't like interesting or cool enough or whatever. And I suppose because of that, I just went through my whole life thinking I was shit. Like, not really doing anything right, not really getting any praise, not really like feeling like emotionally safe or appreciated by anyone. And I think I also felt really controlled my whole life as well. So controlling my eating, or not, in some form or another, controlling my eating was my way of taking control of my own life. It was the only thing that I felt that I had that was mine. if that makes any sense. Yeah, it was my own way of, I guess, feeling good about myself. Again, that sounds so backward, but that's how it felt to me. So yeah, I'd say that I've struggled with self-worth my whole life, and then it gets even worse because you're pretty much destroying your body like every day, and you're destroying your relationships, and you hate yourself and you feel shame, and you're hiding yourself from people, and then you hate yourself even more, and it just becomes this like ridiculous cycle of just never feeling good and never getting back up. But that definitely stemmed from a young age, like, I don't know, like 4 or 5, who knows.
You say you felt like you weren't emotionally sort of taken care of as a kid. What would have had to be different for you to not feel that way? What is it that you think you wanted at the time?
I think more reassurance and being allowed to express myself, and I'm from an Italian family, even though I wouldn't say I'm very Italian myself. I'm pretty British, but tell by the accent. But
Pretty British, mate.
But I am British.
I'm from Italia.
My upbringing was, I guess, very Italian. Like my grandparents, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and my mum learnt a lot from them, and they're not very emotionally open people, even though everyone thinks they are, obviously, because they're all chatty and friendly and whatever, but actually they're not. Like, you're not really allowed to talk about things like depression, your eating disorders, whatever crap you're struggling with. I was bullied a lot at school. I didn't feel like I could really talk openly about that. I actually struggled with a lot of things when I was younger, and I never felt I was allowed to talk about anything. And I never felt, and when I did, I just never felt comfortable. I always felt like I was some sort of like problem, basically. And so again, you become really self-reliant. I didn't feel safe again. So I've pretty much just walked around just being like, actually, all I need is myself. I don't actually need support from anyone else. It's only until now, really, I'd say like the past few years, that I've become a lot more open with my friends and my family. I can now talk to like my dad and stepmom about stuff. I can talk to my mum openly about things. It's hard, but I don't feel like I have to hide myself or suppress my emotions or whatever anymore. But as a child, you don't know any of this, right? So as a child, you just need, if you're crying, or if you've fallen over, or if you've been bullied, or you've had something crap happen to you at school, or you're upset with something, you just need someone to like hug you and be like, you're okay, and just let you freely talk about that thing. If you're dismissed or told no, or you're too scared to talk about anything, then you don't feel safe, and you don't feel secure, and you then think there may be something wrong with you, or wrong with what you're feeling or thinking.
Do you think being dismissed is worse than being denied? Because if you're denied help, at least they acknowledge that what you're feeling is real, or that whatever you're going through is valid in a way. But if you're dismissed, it's like the problem that is causing you so much grief isn't even acknowledged as a real thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're both bad, aren't they? Well, they're both not great. Yeah, I guess people not acknowledging you is awful, isn't it? Because you just feel like you can't. You feel like you're nothing. What you've said hasn't been heard.
You feel invisible.
Exactly. You feel invisible. You just think, you think you're nothing. You think what you've said is invalid because someone hasn't. Even now, God, even if I'm in the blooming girls' WhatsApp chat and if someone doesn't reply to me, if someone's read something and they've ignored me, I know that they've got all their stuff going on about their day. I know that. I know they've got children. I know all of this stuff. But I see it as a personal thing. I'm a bit like, F you then. I'm not going to reply to you. Because I think I still get triggered by those feelings when I was younger, maybe, of not having people acknowledge me. And it riles me up and I get wound up about it. And I think, God, that's so rude to like ignore someone or not reply to what they've said and not acknowledge them. It's like you've literally been like, I've seen what you've said and I actually don't care. Or I've heard what you've said and I don't care. You're not.
Do you think if you take the feelings out of it and you look at it in a logical way, do you really believe that is what goes through your head? Or do you sort of accept that it's basically a trauma response that can just be very overwhelming?
Oh yeah, it's a trauma response. Because logically, my friends, I'm really lucky. I've got loads of amazing friends. I can talk to my friends about absolutely anything, and I've learned that they've really just accepted me for who I am, and so I know they are not ignoring me and they're not actively reading a message and dismissing me. I know that logically, but it's definitely a trauma response. That feeling is definitely like, this is how I felt my whole life. I felt that I was ignored my whole life. It's even the same, like if, say for example, I'm talking to a guy or something and they've just ignored me and not replied, which happens all the flipping time to a lot of women. But it just happens in general because that's day-to-day life, right? Like a lot of people are struggling to cope with everything they've got going on in their life. So actually it's sometimes not a personal thing if people don't reply. But it's that same feeling you get of, I'm being dismissed again and what I'm saying isn't valid enough to respond to. So, and now I just feel shit because I've just gone back to those feelings that I had when I was younger.
It's an easy spiral to get into because them simply not acknowledging what you said, I'm sure just even a lot of the time the feeling would be avoided if they would just say, I'm in the middle of something, I'll reply to this whenever I can. But just the fact that they don't get around to it, even though you know that, okay, they have things going on, like they have kids, for fuck's sake, it's a child.
Yeah.
Do it. But then there's the sort of the inner child of you that's then sort of comes out lashing out of nowhere. You're like, this is just this. They don't read it and then you think, oh, the feeling comes up, they're ignoring me. Okay, this feels exactly like it did as a kid. Okay, maybe even on some level you start to, despite how much you love them and how much you respect them, you start to group them into all the other people who did the same when you were younger. And it's like a fight or flight response that kicks in. Is it sort of like that?
Sort of, I'd say, yeah.
If you were to picture a moment when you were younger, anywhere between 5 and 15, whatever memory comes to mind, you don't need to share what the memory is. But if you were to just visualize that point in your life, little Dani, any moment where you felt like your emotions were at their height, or any moment where you felt like was a defining moment in why you felt the way you did growing up, if you were to transport yourself now back into that moment, like literally just plop yourself in there, if you picture everything, the surroundings, the people there, the colors, the smells, the voices, everything. Again, you don't have to share what the memory is if you don't want to, but what do you think, what would you tell yourself then to comfort the little you? What is it that you wanted to hear that you can tell yourself now?
I don't think I didn't feel as though I was allowed to be heard. I didn't feel I was allowed to be me.
What would you tell yourself?
So I would tell myself that it's okay and I can, and that I am heard. Maybe not by my family, but I am heard by a lot of people. And that actually I'm okay. Like, me being me is okay. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. Because I definitely didn't feel that. I think that if I go back to my childhood, that would be my emotion. Not my emotion. That would be my thing. Is I felt that I could not be me, and I just felt like I was always hiding myself, to the point that I actually didn't even know who I was for ages because of it. So yeah, that would be it. Getting lightheaded.
Getting lightheaded?
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
It's like I've just come out of myself into there and then come back in again. It's really weird.
It's something I started doing recently that maybe you might want to do in the sauna if it's ever empty. What I've started, like, are you familiar with the idea of inner child work? I'm sure you maybe heard about it.
I've started to do that.
Maybe a therapist touched on it, I don't know. A thing that helped me, which literally felt like a weight off my chest, was when I was in the sauna. I think this worked in the sauna because I think when you're physically a lot more broken down, your emotions are a lot more heightened and you're a lot more vulnerable, and like your defenses go down. And in the sauna especially, because it's hot as hell. What I did was I lied down. I did not move at all for maybe 30 minutes or however long you can handle. And I let my mind completely wander to whatever my traumatic or defining moments were when I was younger. And I would picture it literally as if everything from the memory, where I was, the people around me, trying to imagine how I was feeling as well. And I'd plop myself now back then. And it's not like you're talking to yourself, but you're talking to someone else, but that kid happens to be you.
Yeah.
And I think if you do it in the right circumstance, because I guess in a way it's a sort of meditation or astral projection or whatever, if you do it in the right circumstance, if you stay maybe in the sauna long enough, if you stay still long enough, you also then sort of dissociate from your body and you don't really feel much because you haven't been moving. It helps you get into that state of mind more. For me, acting as if little Alex is someone else and then talking to him, but like in depth, every fear that he had, every fear that maybe I still have now, and just talking to him and seeing what memories that goes into. So I'd be interested to see how that feels for you, because even just from like 1 minute here, you felt a little bit lightheaded.
Yeah.
I think if you were to do it, on the, not extreme circumstances, but like, being in the sauna for a long time is physically, I guess, extreme. I think you might be surprised what happens.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe it's worth a go.
Yeah, no, I think, do you know what? It's interesting because I have really, I needed to go to therapy for a bloody long time because, Jesus, there's a lot of stuff going on here. But I think for ages I didn't want to go. And I think it was because having to open up all of that again, whereas I just found it quite easy to just go along with my life and do what I was doing and manage it as well as I was managing it, and hiding everything I was hiding. And everyone thought I was amazing all the time. Everyone always thought like I never had any issues because I was so good at like just being composed. I think even now, like I'm quite good at hiding stuff. But so the first time I thought about stuff like that, like going back to what I felt like as a kid, it was really, really uncomfortable and I really didn't want to do it at all. Whereas now I get the benefit and it's still a really scary process. But it's like something that I'm like, okay, I'm actually more open to it now. So yeah, maybe I need a sauna.
That's why I'm in the sauna so much, that I'm like, yeah, it feels good, but especially if you go during a quiet time. Admittedly, you work out sort of during peak hours, so it's probably going to be quite busy. But either way, not even necessarily in the sauna, just at home. When I first heard about this idea of inner child work, I thought it was some like, liberal nonsense, hippie bullshit. But the more I gave it a go, the more I sort of entertained the idea, I think there's a lot more benefit to it than we think. Because we're living now in the age of, we're all in a spiritual war. There's not really a physical war, at least not in this part of the world. Our parents and grandparents and the older generations, they were raised and they have the mindset that they did because they went through literal war. So they had to physically take care of themselves. But now, probably from the 90s onwards, in this part of the world, it's a spiritual thing. It's a mental thing. What I've started doing is, the hardest part of change, it's not knowing what to do, it's being open to it. Because if it was that simple, like the easiest example is as a trainer.
Yeah.
Everyone knows how to lose weight, basically, if that's your goal. Easiest example. Eat a little bit less, eat a little bit better, move a bit more, maybe lift some heavy stuff for yourself. That's it. But as I'm sure you know, part of having a trainer, it's not just being told what to do. It's keeping accountable to it.
Yeah.
It's, some people have me not even for the knowledge. It's purely just to have an external source of accountability. Everyone can benefit from a trainer. That's the main reason why even trainers get trainers. It's not because, okay, I don't know this thing, let me learn, which sometimes it is. It's, I cannot be bothered doing this for myself. I know what I need to do, but I'm just can't be fucked. But if I physically pay someone to do it, the financial incentive is also a big one.
Yeah.
Because you then also have to answer to someone else who's not you. And unfortunately, we are a lot better at being accountable to people who are not us. So what I think would help is, again, not qualified on this at all, but I'm just going to give my opinion anyway. I think that sums up every podcast. I'm not qualified on this, but I'm just going to talk. When you feel that trauma response happening, like let's say you send a message in the group chat or your friends or whatever it is, and they don't reply, it might do you potentially a bit of good to, it's what's called dialectic thinking, where you think to yourself, but you split yourself into two people and you sort of have a conversation back and forth. It's a hard thing to develop and it feels stupid at first.
Okay.
But I think if you try and if you separate yourself into you and young Dani, when you have those overwhelming feelings of, I might spiral now, I might think they're ignoring me, then it affects your self-worth and you sort of go back into that old headspace. See what happens if you literally just detach from it. If you let yourself feel what you're feeling, but then just be aware of the fact, okay, this is an old version of me who's still very hurt from this stuff.
Yeah.
Because when we get triggered by things, it's not something, unless it's like so severe, your nervous system snaps. It's not, I don't think it's something to avoid, because anytime we feel resentment or fear or anxiety or stress or triggered by something, that is your body telling you something still needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
In a way. It's still an old memory or like old memories, maybe years worth, where we're not as comfortable with it as we think.
Yeah.
So maybe see what happens if you literally just separate yourself into two people, you and young Dani, and think, okay, I'm feeling this, but it's an old version of me. I still love my friends. I still respect them. I know they respect me. I'm just going to let this feeling pass. I'm going to let little Dani have her moment, and then I'm just going to not act on it, and then we just see what happens. How weird does that sound?
No, it sounds okay. It sounds good. I think especially with the triggering thing, like I've actually noticed this year I've become less triggered by things, which is good. Whereas that's lots of different things, to be honest. Whereas last year, I would say I was even at the beginning of the year, to be honest, I'd say I was very much in a space where I was triggered by so much, and I would just feel really emotional all the time by like a little, small thing. So I do agree with you in that it is something that's within you, whereas I used to kind of blame the other person before or whatever was going on. So yeah,
That's the thing about being triggered. It's even if someone actively tries to get out to get you, if you're triggered, I think it's because of us. It's not because of them. Like if the easy example that I think went around online recently is if someone came up to you and said, "I hate your stupid pink hair," you as you are now.
I actually thought I had pink hair then.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah. You don't have it. So what does it mean to you?
Yeah.
Nothing. But then if someone hits on something that does actually resonate, it's just because that's sort of what you tell yourself. Going back to the eating disorder for a little bit. What role do you think fitness played in helping you get out of that mindset? Or at least taking the first step out of it?
So firstly, so fitness for me has changed because I was always very active when I had an eating disorder because I constantly wanted to burn calories. So I would use fitness as a way to lose weight or maintain, just keep my very small, low weight that I was for a long time. But I was very aware of doing that, even though, so when I came to you, so I guess when I joined the gym and when I came to you, the reason for that was actually so that I could manage my obsession with my weight, which is obviously another obviously huge part of the eating disorder is you being obsessed with your weight. And it was so that I could start to build muscle so that I wouldn't obsess so much about, I was putting on a few pounds or whatever, or I was eating more. But I wanted to get to a place where I was like, but it's okay because you need that food and you need that fuel because you're building muscle and you're training, etc. So firstly, coming to you was more of I really need to, I'd noticed I was still trying to keep my weight really low. And so I was like, I haven't recovered. Even though I tell everyone I've recovered, I haven't recovered. And I felt like I was lying to myself and being a bit of a hypocrite, to be honest, because I was doing like this voluntary work, this stuff with eating disorders, and then I'm still trying to control my weight by excessively exercising, etc. So coming to you was more about sort of getting a handle on that and viewing my body in a different way so that it wasn't about weight loss, it was about actually I'm getting stronger. And so I now don't really need to focus on my weight. I can just focus on getting stronger. And the more I started to do more things like being able to do a chin up and stuff on the rings and things I never thought I'd be able to do, the more I then became to appreciate my body and actually be really grateful for it, and then realize like actually how incredible our bodies are and how much you need to look after them and not destroy them because they're actually capable of so many things. So it's really changed, actually. Fitness has really changed, and I'm no longer, and like I said, I do have my relapse days. They're not often, but they happen. But I no longer worry about, I've put on loads of weight since I've trained with you. And
how much weight are we talking? So how much did you weigh when we started?
I'd say about a stone.
In kilos?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay,
that? So that's like nearly 14 pounds.
So that's about 6-ish kilos.
Okay, so I shouldn't say loads because that
no, that's
probably isn't.
That's a lot
for
of
me,
weight.
For me, that was a lot.
Considering a lot of it, if not most of it, is muscle, that's a tremendous amount of weight.
Yeah. Because there was a time last year when I was just really, I think before I started training with you, where I was, my weight had got really low again, and I was very aware of that, and I was like, no, we can't, I'm not going back there. It's taken so long to get to a place where I'm not there, so I can't do that. So now it's my perception of my body's changed. At first, when I started putting on weight, I will admit it triggered me a lot and I hated it, and I was panicking etc. But actually, I'm really happy with it now. And I look back at my old self and I kind of feel a bit sorry for her. And now I just feel a lot more healthier and just better. Like, my confidence has increased a huge amount over the past year through this, but also various things.
How has it increased? Give me examples day to day, whether it's dating, whether it's talking with friends, whether it's work, everything.
I think in myself, like, I actually, for once, like, I never felt attractive, and now I actually do feel attractive. And I do think I have a nice figure, and I am actually more comfortable with wearing different things. Whereas, again, like, before, I would always try and hide myself. I know this sounds crazy, right? But, like, you know, even like gym leggings. So before, I would feel really funny about having my bum on show, or just, I wouldn't wear crop tops and things. I don't know. I just felt really funny about wearing certain things. I didn't like to feel exposed. And now I will happily be like, no, actually, I look all right. Even if I've got like a bit of flab or something, or I sometimes watch my gym videos that I put up and I've seen that I've got, like, you know, a bit of flab around my stomach, which is actually fine because it's normal.
It's normal, and you still have visible abs.
Well, yeah, that's thanks. That's great. But yeah, I guess when I'm like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but what I'm trying to say is that I just feel actually that my body's okay. It's a good body, whereas I never felt that before. So that's increased my confidence, because then I'm like, I feel like I can then go and talk to men, women, whatever, and I feel confident in conversation with them, instead of, again, trying to hide myself or thinking, why are they talking to me? Like, why do they find me attractive? Which is what used to go through my head constantly. And then I suppose because of that, it's then made me more confident at work, and more confident in my abilities, more confident in just speaking out and having open conversations with people, and being more, I guess, visible, as opposed to just wanting to be invisible. It's quite deep, actually.
There's this joke where, it's not really a joke, but a lot of people say that when they start going to the gym, yes, it's for health reasons, but I think more people need to be okay admitting that they want to feel sexy in their own body, because there is no worse feeling than not looking. Well, okay, one of the worst feelings is when you look in the mirror and you actively dislike what you see. It's fair enough, you know, we have our small insecurities, we have our small preferences, like maybe this could be bigger, this could be smaller, whatever it is. But if you look at it and you're repulsed by it, or you feel gross, that affects everything.
It's horrible. I've been there a lot throughout most of my life. It's horrible. The feeling of, like, I can't explain the feeling of wanting to hide, yourself. It's a strange thing.
Because then that also ties in with what we were talking about before, with feeling shame.
Yeah.
Because not only do you feel shame for who you are, or what it is you're experiencing, or what you're feeling, you feel shameful of how you look. You put all of that together, it's a wonder that it's impressive, and I think you should be, don't know if you've ever thought about this, but the fact that you didn't go to a place that was so far gone that you couldn't get out of it is pretty good. Given how low...
Almost.
But you didn't.
Yeah.
Almost sure.
Yeah.
But you didn't. There are so many people that I'm sure you know when you did the volunteering work, or just people you know now maybe, where they go to the dark place, but they are genuinely hopeless. Not just how they feel, but you cannot imagine how they would get out of it. Not functioning in work, not functioning at all. It's fair enough if you're dysfunctional, but if you're not functioning, you can't hold a job, you can't hold anything. The route, I don't know, whatever route that takes, you still manage to get out. Maybe you don't know how, or
No,
you
I
think
don't.
about it sometimes.
And there were definitely times where I was not functional. There have been definitely times where I've, like, for example, been sacked from jobs and not passed probation, and haven't been able to, like, I'm in sales, haven't been able to perform because I just feel so shit. But yeah, I've not got to a place ever where I've literally not been able to, like, work or whatever. I've always managed to kind of keep it going. But, you know, it's really easy for people to lose that, it's really easy for you to just, like, lose control when you're there.
Even when we're not there, it's, I think people who don't have much experience or understanding with not necessarily eating disorder, but just any sort of, let's say, psychological dark place, it's easy to look at someone who's in it or close to it and feel very disconnected or very detached or very different, like, oh, that could never be me, or oh, I would do this. Like, there's a lot of judgment you get from it. For the eating disorder too, probably. People look at you a certain way because they think themselves too good to be in that place, and they think lower of you because you went there. I think if everyone was to really just try and reflect on it, and if everyone understood just how close we all are to being in that same place, I think everything would be a lot easier to manage. When you read I don't know, the easy example is when you read a book, or when you hear something that's going on in the world, anything that happens, and there's like a hero in the story, and there's just a bunch of side characters who get fucked over. It's easy to think of ourselves as the hero, but a lot of the time we are the people who get left behind. You hear a story on the news where someone does something horrible, and it bugs me so much when someone says, oh, that could never be me. Like, yes, it could.
It really could.
It really could.
This reminds me of something. When I was younger, so I struggled a lot with my friendships when I was younger, and a lot of that was my own fault, but because of where I was in my life at the time.
Fair enough.
Well, anyway, we've moved on from that. It's fine. But I remember one of my friends at the time, who I don't speak to now, said that she used to say that depression wasn't real. And at the time, I obviously suffered with depression because of everything else. And I never really said anything, but it used to make me really angry, because I was like, okay, a lot of it is a mindset thing. It is. I don't disagree with that. But it is very real for a lot of people. And saying that, I just thought, I don't know, I just thought that's just such a weird, strange thing to say, because you never know when something could happen in your life, something could happen to you don't know, and suddenly you could feel overwhelmed, and you could completely not feel yourself. It can knock you. Like, life is so unpredictable, right? And anything can happen, basically. And what I'm trying to say is that I do think we constantly have to be really conscious and aware of what we are doing and how we are feeling. And like, when I say, like, the eating disorder never goes away, I constantly have to be managing it. And I feel like we have to do that with our mental health as well. And so, yeah, it's the same thing where, you know, someone says, oh, that could never happen to me, or that's not real, that's all in your head. Actually, it could happen to anyone. And you definitely see people that are very, like, mentally strong maybe lose their job, or lose a loved one, or go for a breakup or whatever, and suddenly they're a completely different person.
We are all one bad day away from turning into completely different people. And that bad day, I think, when we think of, okay, what would that bad day need to be? I think in reality, we think it would need to be a lot worse than it actually does to change us. It's if everyone could accept that, if everyone could really understand the depths of how close they are to it, then it would be a lot easier to talk about this kind of stuff as well. There'd be a lot less judgment. And normally I don't really say this about anything, but this would be a good example of where it would be useful for everyone to have more empathy. Like, I don't really say that about me. You know me, I'm a fairly cynical person.
Yeah.
But objectively, if everyone had more empathy about this, it would be a lot better. We are all dealt. All good? Yeah. We are all dealt a certain hand in life. Like, you probably, I mean, who knows what the future holds, but hopefully not. You are never going to have to deal with name a different addiction that you don't need to deal with. This just happens to be
Heroin.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. This just happens to be the one that you're dealt with. But we're all slaves to something. Yours happens to be the eating disorder. Other people happen to be alcoholism. Other people happen to be heroin, drugs. Other people, sex addicts, to the point where anything too much will mess you up. And it's just how we're built. But the more people think that they're above it, just pisses me off. You'll be hearing something on the news, or even, again, this is a horrible example, but the school shootings that, I don't know if there's been any recently, maybe the news just hasn't reported it, but when there is a article or a coverage, whatever, of a school shooting, it's a horrible thing to happen. But I don't think people realize that you need to think why it happens, because we are genuinely not that different to the people that do it.
Yeah, this is like, there's always reasons, right? Even like when I think about, there's lots of stuff that, like, I was really angry when I was younger, and got a lot of people that I know that I don't really talk to anymore, that I was friends with, used to think I was actually crazy because of the way I would react to things, and the way I could just lash out or cut people off or all of these things.
Probably seemingly out of nowhere as well.
It would have definitely been out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It wasn't for me, but for everyone else, it was definitely out of nowhere. Because I never talked about or expressed anything. I just let it get to a stage where I was like, okay, now I am going to go mad. But that was literally because of everything that was going on, everything that had happened, trying to hide everything, and then suddenly it just explosively comes out. And I guess this is with a lot of things, right? This is like you were saying with, obviously I don't know, I'm not going to start commenting on school shootings, but it's like the same sort of thing where people just lose it because they haven't been able to deal with. Actually, do you know what this reminds me of? The Britney Spears book that I'm going to talk about, because she was saying about why she shaved her head. And it was because she literally felt like she was going crazy and that she wasn't allowed to express herself, and that she'd have to just push herself, her emotions and everything away until she basically got to a point where she just lost it. And she was kind of like acting out, I suppose. And I guess that's with anything, isn't it, if you don't deal with it?
And it's because she just wanted to feel in control. It all manifests... Excuse me. It all manifests in different ways. For you, it happened to be an eating disorder. For her, it was shaving her head. Whether it's our upbringing or a childhood or literally a singular traumatic event, people just process it differently. For example, it's a very touchy subject. It's a very sensitive subject, and people tend not to be very open about it. But sexual assault and sexual abuse, if you experience it at whatever age, it might turn you from one extreme. Either you become sort of, let's say, very sexually active and forward as a way to gain control over what happened to you, or you go the other, someone might go the complete opposite way and they actually shut off from any sexual interaction at all, because that is also their control. Similarly with food, some people overeat, some people completely don't eat at all. You have obesity on one end and then severely underweight on the other end, but it all basically stems from the same place. So when people deny it, that it's not real, or it's judgmental, or you just shun everyone out, it's going to make it worse. It's not going to help you as an individual as well, because inevitably, chances are, if someone close to you then experiences it, you're going to be useless to them, and then that's going to cause a rift between you two. Like, how many moments were there when you were younger where, whether it's friends or family, the way they would react to your reality, you would just think it's so wrong. How can you react this wrongly to it? Like, all I want is a little bit of empathy in this, or to at least acknowledge that what I'm feeling is real, instead of just turning a blind eye to it, because then I just feel more invisible again. Did you ever have those moments?
I mean, I was very angry my whole life, so I have to talk about anger quite a lot in therapy. It would have been anger, actually. I would have been angry that I wasn't like heard, or people aren't responding in the way that I want to respond. Even now I get wound up quite a lot about things, and I think, oh, for God's sake, like, I would have felt that a lot as a kid. Definitely.
What would you say to, well, twofold, what would you say to people, or maybe even any young girls listening to this, or older women or men or whoever, who are in a similar situation to what you used to be? What would you say to them to help? If they're still stuck in that same loop, what, obviously it's based on your own experience, it's not professional advice, but what would you tell them?
If they had an eating disorder, do you mean? Look, it's really hard to give advice to people with eating disorders, because everyone has their own experience, and also you have to be really careful, because for example, you can't, you have to be so careful, because you can't come across as trying to tell someone what to do, etc., because actually that could make it worse. But what I would say to someone that is feeling that awful is
and willing to do something about it.
And willing to do something about it, is that there is a way out. Because from all the people that I've spoken to that have had an eating disorder, or that I've had really deep conversations with about this, they basically think that they are the disorder, which is what I thought I was. I actually thought my whole identity was bulimia. I didn't know who else I was, because that was me. I would say that there is a way out, and to give them that reassurance that actually it's okay, and it will take work, but you will be able to find an identity outside of this whole cycle. Yeah, that's all really. I also would say to talk about it and be open about it. People don't really talk about it because they feel shame, and they feel scared, and they think people are going to judge them, and they think everyone's going to think they're crazy. And then you don't talk about it, and you don't deal with it, and you think it's this huge, massive thing. But actually, if you do find people that are willing to listen to you and listen without judgment, then that's a really freeing thing. And starting to be open about it and talk about it can really help you, like, in your whole recovery process.
Do you think there's a way for them to gauge how much of a good idea it is to tell a certain person? Is there a way for them to tell who would be a good person to talk to? Because, it's simple to say, oh, just talk to friends and family, but just like with you, a lot of family made it worse sometimes, a lot of friends made it worse.
Yeah.
What do they look for in people that are worth confiding in?
You have to speak to someone that does not judge, in general, that you can feel open with and vulnerable with. And you have to talk to someone that gives you the space. It's the kind of person that gives you the space to speak freely and that will listen to you. It's not the kind of person that gives lots of unsolicited advice and
there's plenty of those.
Yeah, and offers their opinion on something, on an issue they don't know about, or it has to be someone that is supportive, that you're able to talk to openly with anyway, and that isn't going to judge you, because then you will feel so much more free to talk about it, and you're not going to feel shame when you talk about it as much. Whereas if you then talk to a person who is quite judgmental and they tell you what to do, and they try and force food upon you and all the other things that people do, that's very annoying. You then your defense goes up and you start putting your walls back up, and actually you then think, no point talking to anyone, because if I talk to someone, they're going to expect this of me, or they're going to tell me what to do, or they're going to do whatever. Which is what I found with a lot of people.
You've been very open about your recovery journey and everything that it came with. Like you said, when you were younger, it was something you definitely struggled with, to be, I suppose, open and vulnerable with anyone, let alone doing it online to God knows how many people now. And as of June this year, you started your blog.
Yes.
Sweet and Single in South.
Yes, that makes me laugh. I like it though.
It's cool. It's a little triple S. What's your, we'll dive into it a little bit. What's generally been your experience with blogging about dating so far?
So the reason why I started it actually was
Madonna.
Was Madonna, yeah. No, it was actually a fight back.
Oh.
In a way. That leads on quite well to talking about people that are judgmental. But anyway, so it was a fight back, because I was literally so bored of having friends and family constantly commenting and asking me about my dating life and relationships, and people saying things to me like, haven't you tried going on dating apps? And just giving really ridiculous, trying to set me up with people that I don't find attractive, all of these things, and then feeling shit about myself again, because amongst everything else, I also seem to find it very hard to be in relationships or actually meet anyone. And when you hit a certain age as well, or I know I'm not old, but once you hit your mid-30s, people then comment even more on what you're doing, who you're dating, etc., because they then start talking about your biological clock and things you need to be aware of. And actually, I became so wound up and so frustrated, and I also saw how upset my friends who are my age, that are also single, and lots of other women in their 30s are. And I was like, no, I need to start talking about this, because people need to stop asking you about, do you want children, and you're gonna have to meet someone then if you want children. And anyway, it was a fight back to kind of just be like, look, F you, I don't need to live in your way. I've had a lot of struggles in my life which have made me struggle with relationships and find them challenging, and find it challenging to meet someone. And I don't need to feel that shame again that I've had my whole life. I don't need to feel that again. I don't need to have someone judging me on what I should be doing, when actually it's none of their business. And I don't know why it should be their business. So it was really okay, I'm going to make people aware of this stuff. I'm going to start talking openly about my experiences, and I don't want anyone to question me on what I'm doing. And that was my way of doing it. And so I found that a good thing, in that actually my friends are way more supportive of me now, and my family are way more supportive of me. I don't feel embarrassed about myself anymore, which is amazing. I don't feel like there's something wrong with me, still sometimes, but I don't feel like every day there is something wrong with me, because I also know that there's so many other people that go through the same things as I go through. But then on the other side, I have had obviously loads of people unfollow me, and I know that people that I've worked with before, or people that I've went to school with, or my exes obviously see stuff, who follow me on Instagram still for some reason. I know that they're watching me. They will also watch and listen to this and think, what the hell is she talking about? Or they'll be cringing at me, or they'll think, who do I think I am? I'm very aware of that. And that then gives me anxiety, and that's also triggering for me. And I get really low days where I think, oh God, I think people think I'm a weirdo, don't they? I think they think, what am I doing? But ultimately, the good thing is, I'm also not ashamed about myself anymore. And I know that I am connecting with multiple other people that are feeling the same. And that is what I wanted to do, in a roundabout way.
If you start something like this and you don't get anyone basically shitting on you, you're probably doing something wrong as well. There's no way to talk about anything remotely personal without a big proportion of people either disagreeing or shitting on you or attacking your character or just judging in some way. But at the very least, you have that big positive feedback as well, because you can counteract it. If no one said anything good, then it would be a lot harder to do it. The transition between feeling invisible and
being visible.
Well, there's being visible, but do you have moments where you have like completely random people commenting or messaging or sending you things that you barely even know, but what they say not only makes you feel visible, but it makes you feel seen?
Yeah.
What's it like?
Strange, actually. It's nice. It's really nice. Like I feel like, do you know what's really funny is things like, okay, so you know, I have been like treated quite poorly by men for pretty much my whole life, and that's a lot of that is my own stuff, right? And it's not feeling worthy myself, so picking men that are also not very worthy, and then in turn you get treated like shit. And again, that was my own sort of issue. But I've had men that have in the past dismissed me, ghosted me, maybe like made out that they wanted to go out with me, and then I've never heard from them ever again. I've had them message me to tell me how well they think I'm doing, and which is funny, but also for me a very odd experience actually, because I at the time would have felt so devastated and so discarded, and I would have felt like shit, and actually I did have done several times. And then to have messages from them and they've noticed me, and I've actually not even noticed, I didn't even know they followed me, some of them, to be honest. And that is a really weird experience. I can only just describe it as weird. But it's also good, because it's like, I feel like I've grown so much. I feel like I've gone from this place of being like just shit to a place where I'm like speaking out about all of this stuff, and people actually think I'm doing all right, which is a hard thing for me to get my head around. But yeah.
How often do people comment certain things? Let's say positive things. How often do they comment positive things about, let's say, your blog, and your feeling is that they're talking about someone completely different? Sort of, I suppose, like imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah, quite a lot, actually.
That they'll say something and you think...
I think it's really weird because everyone always thinks I'm doing really well all the time, and I just find it really strange because I'm like, yeah, well, if you actually knew me, like, you might not think that. I think it's just, I don't know. I find it weird. I find it weird when people say, oh, like, I really resonated with that really helped me, or I completely get where you're coming from, and like, thank you. I find my friend said, I wrote something and she said, thank you for speaking out for us. And that for me was strange, because I was like, I don't know, it's just...
It's like you became the spokesperson.
I can't explain it. Yeah, it's a weird feeling. It's what I wanted to do. It's what I wanted to do, and what I want to do way more of, which is why, like, I'm writing so much, etc. But it does seem, for me, it's laughable, because, like, if I think of the person that I was to the person that I am now, I don't even recognize that person. Like, I don't even know...
The person you were?
Yeah, I don't even know who that person is. I really don't. I know who she is. I can look at her and I can, like, pity her and I can feel sorry for her, but it doesn't feel like who I am now. So I don't know if that makes any sense. It feels like I've grown and developed so much, but I can't understand. I haven't registered that.
You had a post that I'm going to sort of condense a few of the lines in, because this is actually really relevant to what you just said. So the post that was, hi there, imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I've basically just spoken about that, haven't I? Yeah.
So to sort of condense one of the themes in it, you wrote, my blog started because I've written for years. Then later on, frustratingly, I don't believe I'll get there. Later on, my way of dealing with it is to assume an alter ego, very Madonna-esque, someone who's eccentric, self-expressive, and committed to the cause. Do you think on some level the person that you've become doesn't feel like you haven't internalized that is you, and that it does feel like that alter ego that you have to adopt?
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it, isn't it? Because I do often think, yeah, I'd say so. I'd say that I have to put on sometimes, like, a bit of a show. But I do this in real life, you know, like I really love, like, meeting new people, and I love having, like, new people around me. And then when I do that, I like to assume a sort of, like, entertainer, like, really, like, chatty, friendly. I love, like, networking and stuff. And that, for me, sometimes is an alter ego, because my actual self inside is not like that. My actual self, like, when I think about, oh God, I probably said something well embarrassing then, because I probably have said something really embarrassing. Inside, I am cringing a lot of the time, but on the outside, I am a completely different person. Like, for example, when I talk about stuff like my anxiety and how socially awkward I am or anxious that I am, etc. I had someone at work ages ago who I actually worked with before for a long time. And he said, I saw one of your posts and I actually just couldn't believe it. And I was like, what do you mean you couldn't believe it? And he said, I just can't believe you've ever struggled with anxiety. Like, he was like, you're so, like, expressive, and, like, you can be, like, really loud, and you're always really chatty, and you're always with so many people. It just doesn't make sense that actually internally that's what you're thinking and that's what you're going through. And I think I've basically just learned to put on this act all the time. And again, same, isn't it? Like, when you're trying to hide an eating disorder and stuff, you're basically hiding who you really are, and you're putting on this act for the outside world to see that actually you're someone that has it all together and you're doing really well.
I would say it's not the same, because in the days when you had an eating disorder, what you would then do in private would actively undo the facade that you would put onto others. It would actively go against it. But now, if you're so it sounds like part of the reason why you love meeting new people and networking and being chatty is because it gives you an opportunity to pretend to be someone else. Someone that you like a bit more for whatever reason. But I'd say the fact that you're able to be that person is proof that that is also part of you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it definitely is me, but I think I have to be more conscious of it. And also, with the imposter syndrome stuff, it's also fear, isn't it? A lot of it is fear of putting yourself out there. So it makes it easier to...
If it's someone else that we put out there.
Yeah, it makes it easier to assume an alter ego, because then it's just like, oh, well, it's just this person that this character that I put on or whatever. Mm-hmm. But actually, if it's like actually me out there myself, then that's way more vulnerable, isn't it? And it's more exposing. And then there's a lot of fear around that.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, 100%. I think it's more just we choose to project the best parts of ourselves, because if you go up to a group of people that you've never met, you have a certain character that you want to portray to them because you will like that person and they will like that person. That's what we want to do because we're socialized creatures. The fact that you want these traits to be you means that those are the traits that you value. If you're able to become that person, which I think you are, you do it all the time, because people don't even recognize that the dark part of you is still you. It means you portray it so well. I think that is plenty of proof that is just as much of a fundamental part of you as the dark side is, because it's very easy for us to value the more negative parts of ourselves more than the positive, especially if that's been your whole life, especially if that's who you see yourself as, who you used to be, and maybe on some level it's who you see yourself to be as now. But if you're able to portray all of those things, and it feels, when you are that person, when you put on that mask, how unnatural does it feel? Or does it just kind of just comes?
It just comes until I think about it after. But then that's when I'll start overthinking. And I'd like to get rid of that bit, actually. That bit can go somewhere else. But yeah, it just comes naturally because I enjoy it, I guess. And I enjoy being this like really like networky, chatty person that like loves to find out loads about everyone and have loads of people around her. And so it does come naturally to me, and then I'll think about it after, and then I'll start overthinking, and oh, actually maybe I said this wrong, and maybe I came across in this way, and oh God, did I look like a show off, and was I like this and was I like that? And then that's where I start to sort of like rip into it a little bit, and that's when it doesn't feel like me, because it's felt like I've put an act on.
Does it not feel like you, because you then analyze it so much that you start to second guess everything you did?
Yeah.
In the moment when you do it, does it feel like you?
Yeah. Yeah.
If it was a case where, I don't know why this example comes to mind, but if you were in a royal setting, like with royalty.
I'd love that.
There's lots of like royal etiquette you need to follow that I have a feeling you wouldn't particularly like. Maybe I'm wrong. If I was there, I would hate it. There's certain rules and procedures you need to follow, certain ways you'd need to act, and there's a certain persona you would need to be that maybe you can do it well, but it wouldn't feel natural at all, and maybe you don't like it. That would be an example of, okay, I'm faking who I am. But if you're able to go up to these people, whether it's work or social settings, if you can be someone who you want to be, and it feels good doing it, and it feels natural, and people resonate with it, and they believe it's authentic, I think that version of you is just as much a part of you as the part that you don't want the others to see, the part that then second guesses everything. Because it's easy to put ourselves down. It's easy to not acknowledge the change that we've gone through, or it's easy to not appreciate the good parts of us. Because when you appreciate the good parts, then that's also like extending out a helping hand, like, okay, I am different now. But if you know you're then going to overthink it, you shoot your own hope down. And that sucks.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just a thought. I could be completely wrong. It's just my opinion. What do I know? There was another post you did, which was... I'm not. There's only two specifically I want to go into. Then the others just like general questions. One of the posts was embracing a single girl summer.
Oh yeah.
So this is the entire quote. I'm going to read it. This is what you wrote. You feel that anxiety?
Yes,
like,
I
shit,
do.
what
Go
did
on.
I say? I've allowed myself to date and connect with multiple people without being focused on a relationship as the end goal. I used to go into dates purely to meet a partner. I'd worry about things like their age, their job, whether they live alone, their relationship history, etc. Instead of thinking if I like the person, how they make me feel, and if I'm enjoying the experiences I'm having with them. When I hear that, because I want you to expand on it a little bit, the impression I get is that you're now not looking at the things like their age, their job, if they live alone. Is that the case? Or you just now incorporate the other things into it as well? Like, okay, what he does is important, sure. What they do, their age is important. But I'm now also looking at how do I feel? Do I enjoy their company? Do I even like them? Do I find them attractive? Is it like you've replaced that for that? Or you look at both now?
I guess I look at both, but also I think what I've learned over, oh God, a lot. I mean, God, I've had a lot of relationships. I've dated a lot of people, and I've really had to learn a lot of lessons. And I suppose I've got to a point now where I'm like, I've also been very aware of what people think about me. I've said this before, and I've also been very aware at my family or people, friends or whatever, judging the person that I've chosen. And so for a while, and because I went out with, obviously I'm not going to say anything negative about them here, but just like people that weren't great for me, that's all I'll say, before, I then went through this whole process of panicking about being single at my age. This was like about a couple of years ago when I split up with me and my ex split up. Panicking about my age, and then because he was a lot younger than me, I then blamed myself again, because I was like, well, I shouldn't have gone out with someone so much younger than me, and obviously it wasn't going to go anywhere. Whereas actually it wasn't anything to do with his age. It was just because we weren't compatible people, and neither of us were bad people. We just both had our stuff going on and we weren't compatible. But then what I did is I blamed myself, so that when I started dating again, I would only look at, I'd be like, okay, well, they have to be this age now and they have to have this sort of job. I want them to live on their own or have their own place like I do. And I'd have all these factors. So then what I would do is I would meet people that ticked these boxes that I didn't actually connect with, because I couldn't even have a conversation with them because we didn't connect as people. And for ages I forced myself to only date specific types of people because I thought that would be the only way I would get into a relationship like my brother was in, for example, or like all my friends are in, if I dated a certain type of guy.
Like good relationships.
Yeah.
Worthy ones.
Well, yeah. What I think they've all got, basically. Mm-hmm. The reason why I thought I didn't have what they all have is because I thought, well, it's because I obviously date the wrong people, blah, blah, blah. So then I basically tried to change myself and do whatever other people were doing, and actually finding that I wasn't connecting with anyone because of that, and I wasn't actually being true to myself, and I was dating people that I didn't really care about or want to date, and I was trying to make it work and make it stick. And And then you kind of damage yourself a little bit more, because then when those things don't work out, you again, like, well, this is what I always do. I then blame myself again. And I'm like, oh God, like there's another relationship that's not gone right. And everyone's now going to think there's something wrong with me again because I can't seem to keep a relationship. But I'm basically dating people based on this list that I've told myself that I need to go for. So I guess what I meant by that whole thing was I'm just bored of trying to fit certain things or trying to make things fit that don't fit. Like I want to be able to, and even I'm going to be really open here, even in terms of gender, like, why do I have to be with a man, for example? This is something I don't know about yet. It's something that I am going through at the moment. But why do I have to be with a man that has all these things in order to have this conventional relationship like everyone else has? But I'm not everyone else. My friends haven't gone through all the same sorts of things that I've gone through, and my friends are not me. So I will never have that life. And that's basically what that was I'm actually just going to relax about it, and I'm going to be me, and I'm going to look to align with and connect with people that are more like me.
That makes sense. In terms of why does it have to be a man, doesn't necessarily have to be. It's more just who you're attracted to. Those are the people you go for.
Yeah.
If it's a journey to go on, then it goes wherever it goes. But I think of all of the complicated aspects of figuring out who is it that I want, that one is simply just who you're attracted to.
Yeah.
And then you try and find the ones in there. Again, in the same way, someone who's very, let's say, plainly straight, not going to be attracted to everyone of the opposite gender. I don't think there's any man who finds every woman attractive. There's not a woman who finds every man attractive, and vice versa, and everything
Definitely
in between,
not.
whatever. No. No.
Definitely not.
What do you think some of the biggest issues are that women have dating in this culture? Potentially age-specific as well, because I'm sure that comes with its own things too.
I think people are so disposable. Mm-hmm. Obviously, loads of people talk about this stuff. Like, there are so many books and YouTube channels and podcasts and everything about dating. But yeah, I think people dehumanize others in modern dating. That's what I think. Like, and what I mean by that is I can't tell you how many times me and my friends have been used by men, and they've made out that they want to date you and they want a relationship, but actually they don't at all, and they don't even think you're worth an explanation. They don't even think you're worth a message. They've just decided that actually can't be bothered with that person anymore. I've potentially swiped on someone else, or I've met someone else through people or whatever. And that person's now disposable to me because I don't need them anymore. And there's so many people that do that. And women as well. It's not just men. Like, you end up getting into this cycle, and I've probably done it as well, where you just think, oh God, no, that person's not for me. That person's not for me. Therefore, they're not worth my time or explanation or whatever. I don't want to converse with them any further, or I don't want to see them any further. And actually, it's so not very human, is it? It's not very compassionate or empathetic, and it's quite horrible. And it then means you have to be like even more resilient. And I'm gonna think back to when I was younger. I very easily got into relationships when I was younger. The reason why they didn't last was my own stuff. Again, eating disorder, everything else. That's my own fault. But nowadays it's different. It's like, it seems like, or maybe it's different because I struggle with this kind of stuff and I've got stuff to work on. Maybe that's why it's different. But it feels like meeting people that you connect with is way harder. Meeting people through friends seems way harder now.
It is.
It's not like you just, you know, my friends who like love them, but they try and give me dating advice, and it's like, mate, you met your partner when you were in your 20s, so thank you, but also you have no idea, so please don't try and give me any advice. But anyone that's been single for a long time and that has tried to date through dating apps or has tried to meet someone now, it doesn't seem to flow as easily. It seems like, and it also seems like people just don't really know what they want. And a lot of people struggle with commitment, and a lot of people have a lot of trauma that is unresolved, and that all translates into dating. And a lot of people are emotionally unavailable, and that means that it's then really easy to discard people and dispose of them because you're not really empathizing with the person that you're dating. So I would say that's the biggest thing, is feeling like everyone's disposable.
Dating in of itself, or just a relationship, is a hard thing to do. Like, the baseline is already difficult enough. But you're 100% right. As someone who's younger, and I guess there are certain people I know who are then still in their teenagers and younger than me too. It's not just an experience thing, it is objectively getting harder, in the sense that there's so many aspects to it, and it all at least most of it stems from, it's always overused, but social media and dating apps. One, your attention span is a lot shorter, so it's harder to stay engaged with someone in person. Like, it is so rare, and this isn't even a relationship, it's so rare to spend quality time with someone where their phones are not involved.
Yeah.
Fair enough if you have work to do, calls, messages, whatever, but where you just blindly start swiping when you're in the presence of someone, I hate that. When you just go to your phone when the person is right there, I hate that. And then when that gets thrown into the mix, the younger the generation gets, the harder it is for them to even talk with people normally. The persona they have, and it is a persona because it's not them, it's like the worst parts of them. The persona people have online, the confidence they have when it's not in person, the contrast between that and then real life is so jarringly different. Everyone is being objectified more. Everyone's objectifying themselves more and objectifying each other more. So the more you objectify, the more like an object you are going to see it. The more disposable the person's going to be. Dating apps make it easy to just swipe and judge everyone based off that. You don't have a chance to actually see the connection in person. Standards are getting borderline unrealistic at this point, because how we view a relationship is that it's there to serve us. And like, so many things make it so much harder now. So to try and navigate that is tough.
Yeah.
Man or woman. Yes, everyone they have their different things to go through, but and then there's the whole gender war that's going on, that there's like so many men are against women and so many women are against men. It's like they're at each other's throats all the time, trying to paint themselves as the victim. Both do it, trying to paint the other person as the one in the wrong, but that's not helping anything either.
It's also just how things have evolved. I was listening to this podcast actually that someone recommended to me, and she was basically saying, and actually this has come up a lot in other podcasts and books, etc., but she was saying that it's really hard, it's actually harder for women to date now, because whereas like before it would be like maybe women weren't as successful, or they weren't as bothered about their career, like years ago I'm talking. But obviously now, like, women are very career focused, and there are so many really successful women at my age that live on their own and they're self-sufficient, they're independent, they've got like thriving social lives, they've got it all. Like my single friends that are my age are all amazing. Like they are amazing women and anyone would be lucky to have them. But the men that they're meeting are they're nowhere near where they are. And then that's another thing in itself, isn't it? Because if you're thinking, like me, for example, if I'm thinking, well, I'd like to meet someone and maybe have children, I don't know. That's another thing I need to think about now. But I want to be with someone that's like on my level, right? Or at least near it. That would be nice. I don't really want to be with someone that lives at home with their mum and dad still at my age. There's a lot of guys that do, but that's also not their fault a lot of the time because everything's changed, society's changed, the economy's changed. It's not as easy to like rent, etc. I get all of that, but I think because of how society and everything's changed as a whole, that has also impacted dating.
100%.
And then that makes it much harder because then you have a smaller pool of people to date. And yeah, but you know, I sound very cynical I try not to sound cynical in my blogs because I know that there are great people out there and I know that eventually I will meet someone. I know I will. I don't know when that's going to be, but it will happen at some point. But it's very, very difficult for a lot of people. And there are loads of things that make it really hard. Yeah.
I think you summarized it quite well in that the pool is now smaller because, again, I never want to say that it's harder for one than the other, but this aspect for women is definitely harder, that women date across and up the social hierarchy. You guys, and it's not a bad thing, it's just how we are wired. It is how it is. Women date across and up, men date across and down. You're more likely to find a successful man who's a doctor or a lawyer who falls in love with a barista or something and will not bat an eye about that. But much less likely to be the other way around, a successful woman lawyer, for example, giving the attention to a male barista. It's not a bad thing because you'll have a lot of men shitting on this idea, saying that, oh, women are too picky, blah, blah, blah. There's so much like anti-woman sentiment when it comes to this. But you guys have to be picky because you are in control of the reproductive aspects of things. So you need to be much more picky with who your partner is, whereas men are just designed to be a little bit more different. It's harder. If you're a well-educated woman or you have a good job, you want a man who's then equally as educated, if not more. You want a man who is equally as, their income is similar to yours or more, maybe intellectually developed, emotionally developed. The pool is physically smaller. So yes, it's tricky because of how society's changing, you now need to be more independent. You need to adopt a more masculine role. But then simultaneously, it's going to make finding a partner harder. So it's
also, what I find really difficult is that I will get told straight away by a man that they're not looking for a relationship straight away, literally, as soon as I've started talking to them. That would be, so I could meet someone through the gym, for example, or I can meet someone else, because I don't actually rely on apps. Like, I've gone through a period of not using them.
I think you're better off without them anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, I meet a lot of people in real life. But you'll get that straight away. I find I start having a conversation with someone and they've asked me out or they've asked me for a drink or whatever, and then they always like frame that with, oh, by the way though, but I'm not looking for a relationship, so if you're okay with just going for a drink or whatever, then that's great. And that's massive, thing for me. Like, I'm just like, well, what's the point of even bothering? Because I'm just gonna end up in this cycle of situationships, and that's happened for long enough as it is. So yeah, I think that for me that is a challenge. And also I found that because I've come across so many like low effort men.
What's a low effort man?
Low effort is when they just can't be asked, but they expect you to just be around when they fancy anyway. So, you know, they're talking to you and they want to meet up, but then suddenly they just don't want to meet up, or they don't reply, or you don't hear from them for like a week, and then they message a week later, and then they're like, oh, when are you free? And it's just low effort, where they clearly just, they can't be bothered. You're just there like when they're ready. And because I've gone through so much of that, and again, this is not just me, there's a lot of other women that have gone through the same sort of thing, or they meet the same kind of guy. Because of that, I now am less attracted to men. So even when a man is being like nice, or I think they're like asking me out, or I don't know, whatever, I just don't find them that attractive anyway. And so for me, that makes that harder too, because I think you just become a bit like jaded and exhausted and burnt out by the whole process, to the point that you're just like, oh, actually, I just can't be bothered to put the effort in. And I think that everyone in the dating, a lot of people feel like that. Even the men probably feel like that, like they're burnt out and they can't be bothered. I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of people that are burnt out and by dating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The very this is one of the biggest problems with the dating culture, not even in this country, but this part of the world. The more casual you treat dating, the more casual you're going to treat yourself. And why not? What would happen if you just stopped dating for a little bit?
Oh, I pretty much have.
Fully,
yeah. I did do that for a bit.
Just to have a break. Because at the same time, yes, fair enough, you go on a date to see your compatibility with someone. But if it almost then becomes a hobby to go out on dates in terms of how frequently you do it, it's going to burn you out. Like,
yeah.
I'm sure you know how it used to be, where dates would be like an exciting thing. Like, oh my God, I'm going on a date. I'm going to dress up, going to look nice, going to do my whatever. But now it's like, yeah, all right, I got a date tomorrow. Got a date end of the week. All right. Then you find yourself not even wanting to go because also the frequency that you're having them at also then lowers the bar for what someone needs to go on a date with you.
And that's the thing with the disposable thing, right? It's kind of ends up like, oh, going on another date. You're not even excited about it. You don't care. And I have actually stopped dating. There is one that I'm going on that I'm, for once, really excited about.
Good.
For once. But as we've always talked about, previous to that, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going on this date, can't really be asked. The reason why I couldn't be asked half the time is because I thought, to be honest, we're either not really going to get on, they're not going to turn up, or we're going to go and their communication is going to fade like it does.
Or that you don't even find them attractive.
Or that I don't even...
Or you don't find them interesting.
Exactly. So I would just be like, oh, I'm going because they seem like a nice person. On paper, they seem like they would be a good person to date, but actually...
And that goes back to what you were talking about in the past.
That goes back to what I was talking about before, and the reason why I was like, no, like I literally have to just only connect with people that I want to connect with and stop thinking the thing is, it's because when you're single at my age, people tell, and this is why I started writing the blog, people give you so much crap advice. So I have friends that will send me pictures of really unattractive guys. Okay, attractive to some people. To me,
you don't find them attractive.
I don't find them attractive.
You can say that, yeah.
Unattractive guys, and recommend that I go on a date with them because I'm single. Because it's kind of like, hang on, why are you on your own? Like, you need to be with someone.
Yeah.
You need to lower your standards, and you need to go out with someone that you're not attracted to, so that you're not single anymore. But then because of that, I, myself, and other people start thinking, oh, actually, I am probably single because I'm too picky. And I'm probably single because I'm not giving enough people a chance. So then you start to give everyone a chance, even if you don't fancy them, because you think, oh, do you know what? They might be all right. I might go on a date with them and we might connect. We might have something in common. And even if you have that little bit of something in common, you're like, oh, okay, well, that's worth a second date because I've got that little bit of something in common. And you go through this process, basically, of going on dates with people that you can't be asked to go on dates with, because you think if you don't, you're going to stay single your whole life, and your friends and family are going to tell you that actually this is what you should be doing. So a lot of the time it's about, I was just doing stuff because other people were recommending I should probably do that, but I've released myself from that, so that's good.
A big part of it, it's a little bit, I imagine, because I don't really have friends sending me pictures of people I should go on dates with.
You're lucky, because some of them...
I'd get pissed off if they sent me people who I actively find unattractive, because then it's like, okay, I'm single, but it doesn't mean I'm desperate. You sending me this on some level, I would probably interpret it as, how low do you think I feel? Or how low do you think I see myself that I don't find this person attractive? Why would you make a bad suggestion?
I actually think that. I've actually thought that at points. I've actually said that as well and defended someone about it. But I am like, I actually see this. I've actually taken offence to this.
So the irony with that is, even as I say, I would get annoyed at that too. I also know that's like, not a trauma response, because that's such a strong phrase to use and everyone's like diluted strong phrases now, but I know that's also a reflection of me, because if I know a friend of mine has recommended me someone, even if they're unattractive, even if I think they're below me, whatever that means, if I know and I accept that they're doing it out of a place of love, that they're trying to help, but then I'm still irked by it, that means on some level there's an insecurity that's afraid that the thing I'm feeling is true.
Yeah.
In the same way for you were saying, well, they won't hear it now, but you were saying that it pisses you off because, it might mean, what, do you think it's too late for me? Do I need to lower my standards? This and this. On some level, it's a fear that you have, because that's how your subconscious reacts to them just trying to help, regardless of how silly it is. Yeah,
it's me thinking, oh, they obviously think I'm not good enough. They think I'm not good enough for the kind of person that I want. When I explain, when someone asks me what my ideal relationship would be like or what I'm looking for, and I'm like, look, I am only going to get into a relationship if I feel like this feels amazing. Like, this is the person that I see myself with. That is the only time I'm now going to get into a relationship, because I've had so many before that haven't been right or fulfilling, or they've been damaging, etc. And I really, really want it to be right. But then when people then say to me, but actually, like, that's unrealistic, and that I should lower my standards, and I, shouldn't be thinking that way. To me, that's them saying, well, you're not good enough to want that. But I'm like, but why not? Because I've seen that. I've seen it. My friends are in relationships that are amazing. Yes, okay, it takes work, etc. So why am I not good enough for that? And that's the way I see it. I take it as an insult, even though I know it's not an insult. But I see it as they're basically telling me that I'm not good enough, and they're confirming my own belief that I'm not good enough. And then I question, am I holding out for the wrong sort of thing? Is it unrealistic?
I think that's two. I think that's two separate things. One thing being if it's unrealistic in terms of is it attainable, but two, am I going for the wrong thing? I think those are two separate things, because people always say, no, you shouldn't question what you want, blah, blah, blah. I think the exact opposite. It is important and helpful for us to question ourselves, to see where we're coming from, to question our desires, our wants, our flaws. In terms of if it's unrealistic, we tend to see relationships the way we do because it's such a personal thing, obviously, because you're bearing your soul to another person that you hopefully want to spend the rest of your life with. It's very personal. If you compare it with something like a business, if you are starting your own business or you're in your job, whatever, and you have unrealistic goals, that's probably a good thing. Because if you're not aspiring to something so successful or so high that a lot of people think it's unrealistic, you're probably not aspiring high enough, or you're just not that ambitious, which is okay. When it comes to your own relationships, you are not the type of person to just like, oh yeah, this is good enough. You said to yourself, if you get into a relationship with someone, it's because it's great and everything. I don't think, question it by all means if you are if you are chasing the wrong thing, because best case, you find out you are, and then you find the right thing for you. I don't think anything good comes from never questioning ourselves. But in terms of if it's unrealistic or not, if you think you can get it, go for it. With time will tell if it's unrealistic, because there will come a point, this is for everyone, where the longer it goes that you haven't got it, then either you're going to keep to it and you do find it, or naturally your desire for it is going to go down. And so in a healthy way, your standards, that's not the right word. Your desires get less specific. Like you're open to more. And what you were saying about, okay, I'm only going to get into a relationship if it's great. Why not apply the same date logic to the dates though?
Yeah.
Because I would imagine if you go on a date with someone, it's to assess the potential of you two being together. Right?
Yeah. And I go on them fully knowing that we are not going to be together. Mm-hmm. I know already I do not want to be with that person.
Yep.
Yeah, I will go on the dates. And that is definitely something I am working on.
It's a tricky one with you specifically, because it also ties in with sometimes we have the response to not be interested simply because someone else is interested. We might like them, they might check the boxes, but then the minute they show they're serious, we might retract. It's like, I changed my mind. Whereas actually, you didn't. It's just, again, another sort of childhood trauma response. So it's a tricky one, especially for you to navigate, because...
Yeah, it's a tricky one for me to navigate, because I have to work on my own emotional availability. And so that's another thing is, going on about men treating me badly, but I'm also attracting emotionally unavailable men. And the reason why I attract emotionally unavailable men is because I'm very emotionally unavailable. So it's all stuff to work on. And so when I get the ick, I guess, where I've decided actually I don't want to go on a date with this person and I don't see them as being a potential, a lot of the time, again, I think that is more of a defense mechanism, and actually I just can't be bothered because I don't want to open that can of, I don't want to go there. So yeah, it's all stuff that I have to navigate. But also I do think a lot of women that struggle with dating are going through this same sort of thing and maybe are not aware of it. I think that a lot of them are also emotionally unavailable, but they're not aware of being emotionally unavailable, so they kind of just get stuck in that cycle. It's only someone told me that I was, and and it made me think, and then I started listening to stuff about it, and I started listening to podcasts, and I was like, oh my God,
this is me.
I'm the emotionally unavailable one. And my therapist told me that I was as well. And I was like, oh, now it's starting to make sense.
You're already in a great position because you're aware of what it is. So it's so often that people will complain about the situations that happen to them, not realizing just how much of a role they played in getting into that situation. Guys and girls. The easy example is, the stereotype is when the girl goes, oh my God, I'm only attracting all the dickheads. Well, okay, but why are you attracting them? Where are all of the good guys? Why are they not going to it? Where do you find them? Oh, I always find them at bars. Okay, start there. Oh, I find them at the club. Start there. It's about where is your pool that you're looking from as well. Not to say that this is what you should do, but there was a funny clip I saw where a woman was asked on a different podcast. Someone asked her, where do you want a good man? She's like, yeah, I want a good man, but yeah, I want a good man. Where do you think you find them? Yeah, church. All right, when was the last time you went? She's like, haven't been in like 10 years. Well then, if you know where to find them and you know that that's where you're attracting, then you can start working on it. But it's exactly what you said. Just making people aware of it is the hardest part. Because so many people you talk to, and they're either willfully ignorant of it or they're choosing to be blind to it. They refuse to look at the role that they are playing, because we're also in a culture where it's about, no, I am the victim. You did me wrong. Which, yeah, sometimes people do fuck you over, but we always play some sort of part in something. At least 99% of the time we do. And when you figure that out, or as you're figuring it out, it's going to help you get out of the loop.
Yeah. I will not be going to church to meet a guy, but yeah, absolutely.
No, it's like I've got my own equivalent of it where
I know what you mean.
There'd be certain dynamics I would just find myself in, but it wasn't that I found myself in. I thought it was. I would attract them because of this part of my personality. Then as soon as I moved past that version of me, I would just see it everywhere, and I would just kind of like avoid it or walk away from it. Or the types of situations I would then attract to would be nothing to do with that. And it's like a sigh of relief. It's like, wow, okay, this is the other side of what I've been missing. So it's pretty cool once it happens, and it definitely can happen. The fact that you're aware of it means you can change. Some people, for whatever reason, genuinely seem incapable of being aware of it. They're so borderline, it's a strong word, but some people genuinely seem delusional about it, that nothing they do is wrong. I'm like, how can you think that? Because you're the one who's going to get fucked over in the end, not the other person.
And if I'm honest, I probably was that person for a long time.
You got out of it.
Like when I look back at my old relationships, but yeah, previous relationships, I definitely thought I was not in the wrong, ever. Mm-hmm. Ever. Until years later, when I looked back and was like, right, that was absolutely all me. Yeah. And trying to tell someone that on a date when they're like, what happened in your last relationship? And you don't want to go into any detail, but you're pretty much like, yeah, I messed a lot of that up because of my own inability to see anything. Yeah, it's quite an interesting one.
Are you saying that it's hard to say that it was your fault on the dates?
It's not hard for me to say that things were my fault because I can own my shit, so that's fine.
Is the reaction you get from the date?
It's more, yeah, if you say, because you always have to have that chat, don't you? Like I try not to ask too much about previous relationships too soon because you don't want to.
Sure.
No one needs the ex chat, do they really? But yeah, when people ask me about my relationship history, I often think they must think the stuff that I come out with is a huge red flag, even though it's things that I'm actively working on. I know that I haven't had a great relationship and dating history, and I know that a lot of that was because of what I was like in the past and the way I viewed myself. I can explain that quite comfortably to friends and family and right now, but trying to explain certain things on a potential date where you're in a world where people are more disposable and are actively looking for red flags, that sometimes isn't easy, because you know that they're gonna, or not know, but a lot of the time you think they might judge you for that. You would hope that they would be like, oh, she's really self-aware and that's a massive green flag. But actually, like, that doesn't end up being the case.
Well, here's the thing. I think it's a good thing that they see it that way, because it's not a matter of... I don't think, again, it's my opinion, I could be wrong, but I don't think that's a red flag at all. If anything, it is a green flag, and it always makes me a bit suspicious where if I have a conversation with someone, or we are talking about previous relationships, and they never mention anything wrong that they did, that makes me suspicious actively. So I think being open about this is a good way to filter out the people who are, for lack of a better phrase, less emotionally aware, because we all played a part in something. It's incredibly rare that something just happens to us and we did everything right. So if I'm with someone and they very calmly explain the role that they played, or even what wrong they did, that's actually quite calming for me, because I think, okay, not only are they self-aware, they know what it is, that means they can start working on it. That means they are aware of what trauma they have, because everyone has some kind of trauma.
Yeah.
The red flag is, one of the red flags with people is when you're on a date and they just only talk shit about all of their exes. Or they say they were all crazy or whatever. I'm like, was it really all of them, or was, like, what did you do?
Yeah,
so
and you definitely have a lot of men that are very quick to say that all of their...
Yeah, oh, she's crazy.
Straight away, their exes are crazy, because a lot of us women get labelled that way for just expressing emotion, actually.
100%. It's, the red flag is when they just name call the ex, they don't explain what actually happened. Like, oh, they were crazy, they were delusional, they were controlling. Okay, but what did they actually do? Oh, they didn't like obviously bad behavior. No, were they crazy, really? Oh, they were very controlling. What happened? They wouldn't let me do obviously bad behavior. Like, it makes sense now. To finish off, I want you to sort of rapid fire common red flags that you think are red flags but are actually weirdly acceptable now. Or behaviors, or just any bad thing that's accepted that you think is actively fucking everyone over. What comes to mind, men or women?
I'm just trying to think now. God, there's so many, isn't there? But what's accepted?
Or just common red flags.
I think it just seems acceptable. It seems acceptable now to have people that are inconsistent. It's like that. It's like that is a but you should be okay with that. And it's like,
no, I fucking shouldn't.
But I'm actually not okay. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with if I'm trying to like date and build a relationship with someone. And I haven't done this for a long time, but if I'm trying to do that, I want to have consistency. I want to have consistency in communication. It doesn't have to be all day, every day. No one's got time for that. But I don't expect to have a message one day, not hear back for 3-4 days, 3 days or whatever, and then for the person then to act as if there wasn't a conversation the other day and just start again from the beginning and actually just ignore everything that you've previously said. But, you end up being like, oh, actually, we're only early dating, so maybe we don't need to have that consistency, etc. So but that's the thing. That's how stuff like that is now accepted.
Yeah.
Because you think, well, actually, I can't ask for that from someone because we're not in a relationship. We're not in an exclusive relationship. And that's another red flag, actually, I would say. I know the dating scene or modern dating has become like this. But the way that actually everyone dates multiple people and there's no exclusivity unless you've had that conversation that there's exclusivity. Whereas years ago, if I would have met someone, I know they weren't dating anyone else, and I wasn't dating anyone else either, because I'd met someone and I'd just see how it went with that person. That's a massive red flag, but it's widely accepted because it's like, well, you actually can't ask for exclusivity from that person because you don't know them enough yet. But that's great for people to, again, just allow, just date around, do what they want, and the other person is then disposable again, which is going back to what I was saying before. So I'd say the red flags that are accepted are inconsistency and basically not having any sort of exclusivity.
Here's the thing with that as well. I think ask away, because the problem, like if you want exclusivity but you feel like it's early days, still ask it if you think it's if you think it's a sensible thing to do, if you're looking to build a relationship, because these are all the positive spins you can put on these red flags or behaviors that are accepted is that if they show them, it's a really quick way to see that they are not for you.
Yeah.
Because, for example, if I'm testing the compatibility I have with someone new, and I need to ask them to be consistent with communication, and let's say we've already gone on quite a few dates, however many that is. It's not that they're not being It's not that they are being inconsistent, it's that they don't have the desire to be consistent. If I need to explicitly ask someone to not see other people while they're seeing me, it's not that they're doing it, it's that they want to do it.
Yeah.
So in a sense, people's inner desires and inner workings are also now out on display. So it also makes it a lot easier to filter out all the bad ones. Just like when you're on a date, and if you tell them the role that you played in the failure of a previous relationship, even if it was your fault, and they judge you badly for that, that is also a bit of an indicator to you, like, okay, this is your value system. This is where we don't align.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to think anything badly of it, but it's just a case of, okay, we're clearly not meant for each other.
Yeah.
So there could be a positive twist to it. What do you think?
I think so. And I think the more I've dated and the more I write about this stuff and the more I experience it all, I actually am so happy when someone shows me red flags straight away.
Yeah.
It probably sounds really salesy actually, because like my whole job is about you want to get rejected quickly at work. I want to get rejected quickly because I can then move on and I can go into something else. And I actually find that the same with dating. I would rather be rejected quickly, and I'd rather know this is not going anywhere, or we don't align, etc. Because I stop wasting my time, as much as it could be hurtful, I stop wasting my time on that person, and then I allow myself to go out there and meet someone that's potentially better. So yeah, I think I do actually think they're good. It's given me an idea for something as well.
A blog post?
Yeah, about something else.
I think it's a good way to approach it, because I approach it the same way as well. The quicker you're rejected, the quicker you can just get on with it. This idea that, oh, you need to take your time. No, you don't. It probably exists, but I can't think of an example where taking your time will actually make a difference in the outcome of the relationship. If you think you have potential with someone, why are you taking your time? Because you either are compatible or you're not. If you ease yourself into it, the only thing that's going to do is it's going to make you both less sensitive to the negativity, so you can get away with doing more stupid shit. That's it. If you think it's worth it, the only way you're going to find out is by doing it. We think like, oh, I need time to think about this. We think that because we think time will change something, that we'll get more information or something will be presented to us. But if you know everything there is, if you have your feelings, you have everything that you think you need to know. If you think it's just a matter of when, then why not now? It's a bit of a cultural thing as well, where, because I'm from Georgia in Eastern Europe, relationships tend to progress a lot faster there than they do here. This whole idea of we're in the talking stage, we're in the exclusive, non-exclusive stage, we're in the what the fuck is all of that? You're either with someone or you're not. You're either
It's a
dating
mess.
them or you're not. It's not good for anyone. It
Literally breeds,
it's not good.
It breeds anxiety. It breeds dating anxiety.
It's
and
horrible.
That is why that is why I struggle massively with anxiety around dating. For example, I have a date next week that I'm really excited about, and actually it's felt like it's really flowing. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't even know if we're going to get on or whatever. I don't know. But I feel like I'm relaxed into it now. Whereas before, I would be either not excited about it or not let myself get excited about it, or I would be so anxious because you know that they are probably dating multiple people, and it seems like more of a choosing process. It seems like more of a you're being judged as to whether you're good enough to see again the whole time, and that makes people anxious and it makes people guarded, and it doesn't really allow for an authentic process, I don't think.
I agree. With a slight little twist, it does make you feel judged and on display, like you're trying to qualify yourself, but you are. That's what the dates are. But it's because we have this baseline level of anxiety around everything to do with it.
Yeah.
It makes us more sensitive to it. Back in the day, when anxiety was at, let's say, all-time low, whenever that was, you're still judging people when you're on the date, but you also care a lot less. Like, you're less self-conscious about everything, so you react less. Like,
you're less aware of judging as well, I think. I don't know, I think it would be, I'm thinking back to when I was a bit younger. You might be like, oh, actually, I don't know if this person's for me. But it wouldn't be this whole, like, everyone analyzes everything, don't they? It's like you end up analyzing all the red flags, and you're analyzing the date, and you're trying to oh, actually he said that, actually that's probably like not a great thing, or you're trying to, it's like you're trying to find out loads of information as well, as in to get to a point where you think, oh, actually they're worth a second or third date. Whereas I do think when I was a bit younger and dating was a bit differently, because I would just meet people through people, and it was just a bit different anyway, to be honest. When I was younger, you would maybe just be like, oh, actually I just don't fancy that person, and that would be it. Or
it wasn't necessarily
you did, and you would see some things come up, but you would kind of just be more accepting. And so
we were way more, I say this like I'm old, I think people were much more accepting. It's a lot, because what a relationship is also changed now. The value of it and how people go into it has changed, because back then, yes, there were a lot of bad behaviors that are now not accepted, but there was also a higher tolerance to things that probably should be tolerated in a certain way.
Yeah.
I would say do not tolerate physical abuse. Do not tolerate the extreme things. But certain red flags now that I think people genuinely believe are red flags, they're the dumbest, most picky things that do not make a difference. This also stems in with the dating apps. How many women do you know will swipe left on a guy simply because of a certain top he was wearing, or a certain hat, or a certain angle of picture, or height? Yeah. Everyone is getting a lot more picky. Everyone is getting a lot more delusional, I think, in their own self-worth as well, as a whole. It used to be, I think what you said with how dates used to be, it was just, okay, do I like them enough? Okay, yeah, he did this that I didn't really like. They did this that I didn't really like. We'll work on it. But now it's like, this is the ammunition I need to know that I'm right, you're wrong. And it feeds back into like the gender war. Everyone's at each other's throats. Everyone is in such a survival mode, because you are just always on display and you're always trying to qualify yourself to everyone. No wonder the dating scene is a bit of a shit show.
Yeah, I think that explains it quite well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a nice end. That's a nice point to end on. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We'll probably do another one, like another 3-hour long episode. It's been basically 3 hours now.
Oh my God.
It's fine. Anything you want to wrap up? Tell people about the blog. What is your blog? Where can they find it?
It is called Sweet and Single in South, and you can find it on my Instagram. Are we going to tag it on anything?
Why not? But say it as well.
Which is Dani.Rizzo single life blog. I feel like I need to change the name of that. And yeah, we can tag the links to the blog.
Will they find it on Google if they just search Sweet and Single in South?
Sweet and Single in South, yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And we will see you guys next time. Hey. Cool. Okay, I'm going to do like a...
That was fun. You're not going to put the whole thing up there, are you?
Yeah, of course I am.
A 3-hour podcast?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.